Hiya BenchMates. This is Beyond the Box Art, the official podcast of the International Plastic Modelers Society UK. Please welcome your host, Paul Pendleton-Brown. And joining him this episode are Mike Baldwin, Dan Brazil, James Nevitt, Mark Housley, and Paul Wong. And we're joined this episode by Stewart and Rolfe from Black Hat Scale Models, plus Martin talking about the recent Scale Model Challenge in Eindhoven.
Hiya BenchMates, and welcome to episode 16 of Beyond the Box Art. We have an update from IPMS UK on the attendance figures for Scale Model World at Telford, and spoiler alert, it was bigger than 2024. We have our first branch spotlight and talk to Wongy, chair of IPMS Bolton. Plus we're joined by Stewart and Rolfe from Black Hat Scale Models in Australia about his builds, and a chat with Martin about Scale Model Challenge in Eindhoven. Our conversation with Stewart took a bit of a left swerve when he started talking about what his channel is going to be producing in the near future, and it surprised everyone. What was it about? You'll just have to listen and find out. If you want to drop us an email, you're more than welcome to comment on the show, tell us about your builds, anything you want to actually talk about scale modelling related, using mail@beyondtheboxart.com. We'd love to hear from you. Or if you're volunteering someone to speak to us about your branch or SIG, drop us a line at IPMS@beyondtheboxart.com. Finally, we'd like to take a moment to thank all of our show sponsors: the Scale Modelers Supply, Fishcop Scale Models, Ammo by Mick Jimenez, Phase Hanger Resin Accessories, Matters of Scale, and the latest to join our ranks, Guideline Publications. Without you guys, what we're doing just would not be possible, so a massive thank you from all of us and our audience worldwide. So, grab a broom, clear space on your bench for your next build, and brace yourselves, as episode 16 starts now. Right, for this episode, I'm joined by Boulders.
Hello there.
Mark.
Hello everyone.
Martin.
Hi, lunchtime in Utah.
And Dan.
Hello Benchmate.
Okay, let's start off with what we've got on our bench. Boulders, what have you been working on since the last episode?
Still on with the USS Missouri. There's a lot. This is a big kit, over 1,600 parts, so a lot of it is very, very intricate in detail. Comes with 8 sheets of sprue. So yeah, I'm just taking my time on it just to build it in subsections and then put it together. But yeah, it's a long project, so it will be on my bench for a while because it's a big kit.
You'll have to put some progress pictures up on the Facebook page.
Yeah, no, I will do. I've stated that I will do a build progress on it because I've not seen one built. She's big, not as big as USS Montana. That's even bigger because it's got an additional turret because it's a cancelled battleship that would have preceded the Iowa class. That's been done in a camouflage scheme for trials as a what if, because obviously she was never completed. And the Iowa is going to be in its normal scheme, which is dark grey with a light grey above. There's a cut off from where the two colours meet. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Metal barrels across the board as well. It comes with the kit. I can see why it's £185 to buy because there's a lot of kit for the money.
A lot of plastic. Okay, and what have you been spending your cash on since Telford?
Something that I actually forgot to get from Telford, out of the many things, was I went to a new model shop about 15 minutes away from me, which you are aware of. I went to PM Store in Warrington in the UK. I had a really nice chat with the owners and I came away with some self-leveling thinner and tool cleaner because I forgot to get them at Telford. That's all I've spent.
Fair enough. Okay, in that case, moving on. Dan, what you got on your bench at the moment?
I am in progress with the big 148 HK B17, which is going to be Piccadilly Lily, 100th bomb group, Thorpe Abbott. The insides are pretty much there. All my wood graining is done. The boards for the waist gunners are all in. They had a little generator engine inside, I believe. Radio cabin is done, bomb bay's done, cockpit is done. Now, HK tell you to put the two fuselage halves together and then assemble the nose section and stick it on. And as we all do, I had a good look on YouTube and a few videos said, if you're going to do it, actually glue the front nose section on and then glue the whole thing together as a traditional two fuselage halves would be. And doing it that way, it allows me to close up the gap where the nose section, where the navigator sits and the bombardier sits. There's a prominent seam where the two sections join, and it allows you to get that one nice and tight, hopefully mitigating that seam being visible when it goes together. So that's coming together well. Overall, as a kit and for what it costs, I mean, this is the pumped up version because it's the bloody 100th box in, but it's basically the HK kit, which is retailing around 80 quid. I'm not as impressed as what I thought I should be for what this kit costs for the fit. And I know that when our Luke did his videos, he said some of the locating areas are a bit vague in the instructions, and they really are. So you've got to do a lot of test fitting so you don't end up with great big gaps when you try and sandwich the fuselage together, which is obviously what you want to avoid. And I've just started, as we are talking, I've just cracked the box on the Gecko Series 1 Land Rover. But it's not going to be done as a military Land Rover. It's going to be in use. I'm going to have a go at a little vignette, and I've got an idea for, and it's going to be a Land Rover that someone bought, because obviously a lot of ex-Land Rovers were sold off through auctions and whatnot. And it's going to be one that has been used for about 30 years by a gamekeeper. And I've got an idea for a little vignette. I've got a figure coming, and I'm going to have to do some scratch building of dead pheasants, which is going to be interesting, which is why I bought the Milliput at Telford. So that's what's on the bench.
Orders, you had a question.
Yeah, it was just regarding, so I've got both. I've got the bloody 100 set and I've got the 32nd B17G. And when that's actually half built, but it's a bit odd. The 48 one, the location's very vague, but the 32nd one's not. It's really bizarre.
Do you reckon they sealed down from the 32nd to the 48th?
I think they have. The locating pins for the 32nd one, it all fits, like your internal bulkhead walls, they all fit superbly.
Right. For example, on a bulkhead wall, the flooring on one side goes into two little locating tabs, but they have to share the same locating tabs with whatever is going in on the other side of the wall. So you almost have to halve the difference of the thickness of the bulkhead wall so that both locating tabs have something to glue and sit on. Now, I think we all know if that was a Tamiya kit, they would have two different sets of holes, one for each side of the wall.
Regarding that, on the 32nd,
yeah,
it's exactly the same, but the locating tabs slot underneath each other, so they actually lock in.
No, on this,
I'm wondering, because they've scaled it down, it's not quite worked.
Yeah, on this, it's what you would call like a butt join, basically. Go on, Martin.
Yeah, people can't see your work there, Dan, but the internals you've done there look amazing. And I see people like yourself do kits like this and the HK Lancaster and stuff, and then close it up. If I was going to do that, I would just do half an aircraft and leave half it open, like the old Castaway.
I know, but this is a very special subject for me, and
I know.
I want to do it justice. Them boys that were inside these blimmin' things, they deserve me to do their office.
People should see it.
I know. I will take more photos. I'll be honest with you, I would love to do it again and do a cutaway.
Do a cutaway, yeah.
To actually show areas off inside.
Definitely do it, Dan. Definitely do it.
It's a shame they can't do like Zuki Moore and do one half clear. I think Zuki does that kind of thing.
There is a monogram, one Mach, but they go for a lot of money. They really do, with that clear side. If I see one at the right price, I'll get it. But they're going up and up. But yeah, that's what's on the bench. And purchase-wise, I bought a set of decals for the B24D Desert Liberator that I was looking for at Telford, and I'll be honest with you, I stood there and went through hundreds of decals and I got bored after a while. So that's the Airfix, the different boxing of the 72nd one. So I've done the H, which was Corky of Old Buckingham, and this is the D. Now, I've got to do a bit of investigation because I believe there's some situation with the canopy on this, which is not quite right. But I don't want to use the kit markings. I wanted to do something slightly different. So I've gone with these Kits World decals, and I've been informed that they take a bit of work. So that's going to be fun.
Just a quick question, Dan. You know, when you did your original B24, did you keep the parts that were over? Because the correct canopy for that one is the one you don't use in the first boxing.
Well, I reckon I've got the canopy on the first one that I did, because when I opened the box, one of the canopies was scratched. So I was like,
And you thought, oh, these look the same.
I'll just use the other one, not realise it. I know that I think there's an extra pane of glass. That's all I could see. Yeah, so, but everybody says that the Ds did not use that. I think it was armoured. I think it was thicker glass on the sides or something like that. Because on the H, there is an armour plate that is added about in line where the pilot sits, because the Corky decal that's on the nose art is actually slightly obscured, and it was on the real thing when I looked at reference pictures. But yeah, to be honest with you, that one went together so nice, really nice.
I think if you drop Airfix a line, they will send you one.
I've never done that before, so that will be an experience to see what Airfix's customer service is like. I've heard good things, and hopefully I'll be able to get that sorted. Well, I want to get it right, and I have to say, I do like the nose on the D. I think it's a prettier nose, because you can see inside the greenhouse, whereas the H fell from the top branch of the ugly tree, didn't it?
Not as bad as that other thing the Americans had. Was it a Bollover, another twin engine thing? There's one in the Pima Museum. I think it's the last surviving one.
But at Telford, I did find next to my West Norfolk lot, there was someone selling books, and I did pick this up, which is American Bomber Aircraft in Development During World War II by Bill Norton. And there is a picture in here of a Liberator with a B-17 nose grafted onto it, and it looks ugly as you would expect it to. So yeah, that's me.
Mark, what's on your bench?
Nothing. Nothing's on my bench. I've given up on the Elise. I'm fed up with it at the minute. So at the moment, I've had a room tidy up. I know you're looking behind me, don't look like it, but I have. And that's it. I've bought nothing. So I can't really talk about much, to be honest with you. I've purchased nothing since Telford.
Good grief.
I know.
Okay. Well, in that case, Martin, what have you got on your bench?
I just finished, I just put it on the page, a North African diorama, and it's for a couple of groups that I'm in that are Tamiya tribute built for the late Mr. Tamiya, who passed away recently. So I used a couple of really old classic Tamiya kits, the LRDG Chevy truck and the SDKFZ 223 armored car, and just a group of figures that have a lot of characters. They're good figures to use. I just finished it. I just put pictures on the page, I think. And
Looks fantastic.
thank you. And I'm going to carry on with the giant church that I got at SMC. I've just varnished the paratroopers and the civilian figures. So that'll be the next step, was working on that. I'm started working on the internals of it as well, which is going to be quite something, because I'm going to do a knocked out Panzer IV in there.
With that church that you've got, that's a plaster type material, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
What are you going to prime that in?
So I've already primed it with a rattle can, just ordinary William stuff. So it's a lacquer, and it's kind of sealed it.
Okay.
Yeah, before I get any further with it, I will probably varnish it before I start painting it, just to seal it all. Otherwise, when I start to do the oils and stuff, it's just going to soak in.
That's why I asked, because I've never painted, well, I've painted plaster in my day job in 1-to-1 scale life, but I've never painted moulded or cast plaster like that, and I had no idea what you would paint on it. And I would imagine there are probably benchmates out there. Is it RT diorama?
Yes, it is.
They're getting quite popular, and I would imagine people are starting to buy that stuff and probably wondering, what do I prime it in? Because that was my first thought.
Yeah. So far, I mean, I've used plaster buildings before, and I've generally just used, as a primer, just used a rattle can, and it's been fine. Nothing's kind of leaked. And then at a later stage, if I'm going to do anything like a pin wash or that kind of thing, I would use a gloss varnish anyway at that point.
Okay.
So that it runs into the cracks and everything.
And another question, how are you gluing it, and what glue are you using? Because I would imagine you've got wall sections that are on a 45 degree.
Yeah.
How are you gluing those sections to make sure that this thing, because you said it's very big and we don't want it to fall apart.
It is the beast. So I've been using like 5-minute epoxy, because in theory, you could use super glue, but it's super brittle super glue. It would just snap. So 5-minute epoxy, and then I'll find, like, I use a little block and use that to make sure that I've got a right angle in there where the walls join together, and just be patient and do one section at a time, because otherwise you'll find out that when you put the roof and stuff on, nothing fits.
That's brilliant. Where's that from?
So that's the skull that's on the front of the Chevy truck. It's from a Ukrainian company called Dan Models, and they do 3D printing stuff, but they do really, really random stuff. I've used their stuff for a few dioramas. They'll do things like a household fridge or a toilet, and they do these cow skulls. You get a box of about 6.
And what about the skeleton? Is that a camel or something?
Yeah, it's a cow skeleton. That's from Royal Model. It's an Italian company. Royal Model, they usually do resin stuff, but that one is actually 3D printed. So as for what my wallet bent to, when I was in SMC, I met a guy called Georgi Stamov, who, I don't know whether you've seen it, but he does a figure of Basil Fawlty in full flow, in Fawlty Towers. He gave me a gift. He gave me a skeleton that was multiple pieces that goes together. And since then, I've had a thought about something I'm going to do for SMC next year, and I've started it already, or about to start it. It'll be one of those machining Krieger suits, knocked out, long abandoned, rusty and old, with the skeleton hanging out of it. And then I found a guy who does a figure that is a young female violinist with a rifle on her back, and she's playing a tune and looks sad. So I'm going to call it Requiem for the Fallen, and I'm going to have her playing in front of this skeleton. And somehow I'm going to have to tie them together. So I might find some kind of badge or unit badge that I can put on the MAK and on the jacket. So that's the plan. Yeah, so that's me.
Are you looking for top quality paints for your next project? Then look no further than the Scale Modeler Supply. Hi, I'm Scott, and as a passionate modeler myself, I've spent years creating the SMS product range, designing them specifically with a scale modeler in mind. We've worked extensively to develop our acrylic lacquer paint range to not only be airbrush ready straight out of the bottle, but also to be very easy to use so that anyone of any skill level can create professional results with minimal effort. Just give the bottle a good shake, pour into your airbrush and spray at 15 psi. So dive into your next project with confidence, knowing that you're backed by one of the finest hobby paints on the market. Head over to our website scalemodeler.com.au to check out our full range and to find your closest retailer.
Brace yourselves. It's the Stash Inflation Report, the segment where wallet sweep, self-control collapses, and new releases thunder in like a tsunami of temptation.
Right then, Benchmates, Boulders here, and once again, aircraft manufacturers have launched a coordinated assault on your bank balance. Let's look at what's taxing onto the stash this week. First up, something very thoroughly modern and very pointy. Italy have announced a brand new tool, 1-48 F35A, due in 2025. We're talking 100% new moulds and 8 decal options, 4-etch colour masks, and because they know their audience, the full USB smooth loadout. Also releasing a new 1-72 Hellcat with 6 decals options, The Hellcat deserves the attention, introduced in 1943, powered by the mighty R2800 and armed with 650 cal machine guns. It was engineered to beat the Zero on its own terms, and it did. With a kill ratio of 19-1, it remains one of the most successful carrier fighters in history. Every stash needs at least one Hellcat, or 6, I'm not judging. Now then, something chunky, loud, and built like a railway bridge. Mini Art's new 1-48 P47N is an advanced kit covering the final production variant of the Thunderbolt. The N1RE introduced the distinctive long span wing with squared tips and more internal fuel essential for escorting B-29s deep across the Pacific. The kit includes razor-sharp rivet and panel detail, full cockpit, 4 twetch belts, clear parts, 3 marking options, a proper heavyweight in more ways than one. Special Orbit releasing a 72nd DH-94 Moth Miner, a charming little release here. The Moth Miner covering both wartime and civilian use across Europe and Africa. The real aircraft was lightweight, low-wing trainer introduced just before World War II. Many were impressed into service for communications and liaison work. The sort of aircraft that did lots of jobs, rarely gets any glory, and absolutely deserves more model kits. Right, I'm going to skip that bit. ICM are releasing the DO217K2, the variant famous for deploying the Fritz X guided bomb, the world's first operational precision-guided weapon. The K2s achieved several high-profile sinkings in 1943, providing that guided munitions were not science fiction. Expect a big wingspan, lots of glass, and that's satisfying ICM engineering. RS models are releasing 2 1-72nd Avia BA122 variants. The BA122 OK AWE, Berlin 1936, and the BA122 OK AWA, Berlin 1936. These represent the renowned Czechoslovak aerobatic biplane that stunned crowds at the 1936 Berlin Olympics flying meet. The BA122 was known for its structural strength and manoeuvrability, perfect for looping your stash into submission. A nice little addition for airliner fans. X-Scale are releasing a 1-144 scale Airbus A300B4 605R, a backbone of commercial aviation from the 1980s through to the early 2000s. The 600 series introduced improved aerodynamics and updated cockpit suite, perfect for anyone who thinks the stashes aren't complete without at least one giant white tube. Stewart continue their mission to make sure every modeller owns at least 3 dozen Spitfires. The dual combo covers the Mach 5B variants during the 1941-42 sweeps over occupied Europe, with multiple markings for 11 aircraft, flown by pilots of multiple nationalities in the RAF. As usual, Edward plastic, 4 to wedge pre-painted, masks, exceptional decals, a very complete package. And finally, a weekend edition P51B/C with the airload cage canopy, 6 United States Army Air Force schemes. There's no 4 to wedge but superb detail. The BCs were the first Mustangs with the Merlin engine and the ones that changed the air war over Europe. And that's all from me, from 5th generation stealth jets to Olympic aerobatic biplanes and war-winning escorts. It's been very expensive fortnight, but remember, kits aren't bought, they're rescued from the warehouse and into your stash where they belong. Nevs, over to you for the nauticals.
Thanks, Boulders. Right then, Benchmates, let's dive into what's been surfacing from the shipyards since our last recording, and it's been a very busy fortnight on the high seas. First up, Flyhawk have dropped not 1, but 2 major Kriegsmarine announcements. Their headline release is the 1-700 scale battleship, the long-awaited sister to their earlier Bismarck. This new kit depicts as she appeared in 1942, shortly after arriving in Norway, during her role in the Arctic interdiction campaign. She carried heavier anti-aircraft armament than Bismarck and spent most of her operational life as a fleeting being, tying down British naval assets simply by existing. Flyhawk aren't phoning this one in either. 3D printed rangefinders, gun directors, superstructure sections, and AA gun fairings all elevate it beyond the baseline Bismarck kit. To accompany her, Flyhawk are also releasing a 1-700th one of the 3 Deutschland-class pocket battleships. It is especially famous for her 1940-41 raiding cruise, during which she sank a total of 17 merchant ships and even shelled Soviet positions during Operation Wonderland. Fans are already whispering about future variants, but given how we've waited 10 years, I wouldn't hold your breath. Next up from styling models, we have something refreshingly different, a 1/700th waterline MV bank. This was a 1930s bankline cargo ship, which went down in history for her heroic final defence during its attack on Portland Harbour in 1940. Despite being only lightly armed, her crew shot down several aircraft before she was sunk, earning her 2 Victoria Crosses in the action. Styling's kit is 3D printed with photo etch and brass masts, exactly the sort of high-quality detail that they're known for. From Triumph model, we're getting a 1/700th HMS Furious, full hull depicting the carrier during Operation Mascot in 1944, one of the repeated British attempts to sink Tirpitz. Historically, Furious is fascinating. Originally designed as a Courageous-class battlecruiser with 15-inch guns, she spent most of her life being rebuilt into increasingly bizarre aircraft carrier configurations before settling into her 1944 appearance. Now, ScaleMates has listed this as a new tool, but realistically, it's likely to be a partial rebox of Triumph's earlier HMS Courageous. That said, since the Furious ended up looking radically different to her sister, expect a lot of new parts. Over to Poland now. First to Fight, known for their excellent 1939 armour series, are releasing a 1/72nd Polish reporting cutter. Very little detail is out yet, but these small naval auxiliaries played key roles in coastal observation and message running during the interwar period. The interesting part is that First to Fight might be gearing up for an entire line of ship kits. If their armour quality is anything to go by, this could be one to watch. Finally, looking ahead to the new year, I Love Kit are releasing a 1/350th USS Fletcher, lead ship of the most numerous and arguably most successful US destroyer class of World War II. The Fletcher served from the Solomons to Okinawa and stayed in service well into the Cold War with several navies. This kit will likely be a rebox of their 2025 USS Stevens with the correct parts to restore the Fletcher's third 5-inch turret, and you can expect the usual full injection moulded tooling with photo included. And that's your maritime stash inflation for this round. And now over to Dan for the armour releases.
Thanks, Nevs. All right, benchmates, let's take a stroll through what's tempting us in the armour department. First up, something really cool and definitely not your everyday subject. The Bodhi have released a 135th World War II Indian Legion infantryman, complete with 3D printed rifle, sculpted by Stefano D'Antonio. Beautiful box art by Laszlo Georgi. Proper quality stuff. A little background, the Legion Frise Indian was formed in 1942 from Indian prisoners of war and volunteers fighting for independence from British rule. They served mostly along the Atlantic Wall, and let's be honest, figures like this are as rare as hen's teeth in 135th. Perfect for a unique vignette or something that stands out on the competition table. Next, a bit of vintage Americana. Copper State have dropped a fully 3D printed World War I US Army motorcycle. Minimal parts, lots of detail, and that lovely early war mechanical charm. These bikes ran 1000cc V-twin and were absolute workhorses, dispatch riding, message running, reconnaissance, you name it. Nearly 20,000 of them were used in the war, and a fair few ended up in Allied hands or sold off afterwards. If you love little vignettes, this thing is practically begging for a muddy base and tired rider. Now Mini Art have arrived with a big old diorama in a box. This is the early production Raupenschlepper Ost, the little tractor built because the Eastern Front ate normal vehicles for breakfast. It comes with the RSO, a full 7.5cm Pack 40, 5 crew figures, photo etch, 4 markings, full engine and interior, optional open cargo bay, and a partridge in a pear tree. Okay, maybe not the partridge, but honestly, if you want a winter scene or Eastern Front layout, this is a brilliant starting point. Right, now for something we don't see enough of. Proper horse-drawn artillery. St. George Model have put out a team of German artillery horses in 1/35th scale, beautifully sculpted, with proper harness detail, great posture, and importantly, accurate tack. These pair naturally with their FK 7.7 NA field gun with limber, giving you a full towing team. Historically, both in World War I and World War II, the German army relied massively on horses. The films wouldn't have you believe that. Even late in the war, they used more horses than vehicles. So if you want realism, these are spot on. And finally, something for the detail junkies. Royal Model have released a super detail interior set for the Auto Belinda 41 armoured car in 1/35th scale. Sharp parts, perfect fit, lots of tiny components that only you and maybe 3 other modelers will ever see, but they will know and you will know, and that's what matters. And these are exclusive from royalmodel.com. And that's all for this episode, folks. Motorcycles, horses, artillery, tractors, and a figure you're probably never expected to see in 1/35th. And as always, buy responsibly or don't. I won't tell the better half if you don't.
Fishkop Models, elevating scale modeling to an art form. Experience highly detailed 3D printed upgrade parts that bring true authenticity to your builds. Creators of the acclaimed Rolls-Royce Merlin engine set for both the Kotare Spitfire and the Dambusters set for the Border Models Avro Lancaster. For bespoke design and printing, our service is as precise as it is personal, all at a reasonable price. Please take a look at our products on www.fishkopcompany.de. Shipping is available for all of our products worldwide.
Visit scalemodelpodcast.com, your hub for the best scale modelling pods, because finding great content shouldn't take longer than hunting for lost photo etch. It's time for the IPMS UK Dispatches with Mark Sanderson, your regular society spotlight on events, branches and SIGs.
Right, it's that time of the show we deep dive into IPMS. So Mark, season's greetings to you. How you doing?
Season's greetings to you as well, Brownie. I'm very well, thank you. I haven't quite got my Christmas tree up yet because I'm a bit of a Grinch when it comes to Christmas, but, you know.
I don't know. Where are all the models going to be stored?
Well, that's very true.
Anyway, moving on. What news have you got for us?
So I've actually got some figures back from Scale Model World, actually, to tell people a bit about how well it did. So we had 6,092 people attend. Breaking that down, there was 2,954 members, which is up from last year, 148 overseas members, again up from last year, and 2,038 members of the public, which is up from last year. So all in all, the actual amount of people coming through the door, that number excludes traders and things like that, but it was higher than it was in 2024.
Okay, does that exclude the people that were actually from the branches in the trade halls as well?
I think that excludes the setup, if they were classed as setup, yes.
Okay, so more members of IPMS than actually members of the public, but still 6,092, that's not bad going.
Yep, that's not bad going. So hopefully 2026 will be even more.
Indeed. And the new logo is out for 2026, I've seen that.
It is indeed, and it will soon be followed by some of the advertising material as well. So hopefully that will be coming out before Christmas.
Brilliant.
Therefore, there will be information that will be dropping at the start of the show season, probably in sort of January, February.
And not forgetting, of course, the first IPMS show of the year is at Bolton.
That brings us perfectly round to my little roundup of what's actually going on. So I've only got, obviously it's quite quiet this time of the year, but I've got two shows. One, they're both on exactly the same day, unfortunately. So people are going to be a little bit torn between this. So we've got Sunday, January the 25th, 2026. First off, we have the South Wales Modelers Show, which is 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., which is going to have club displays in two of their halls. So it's going to have armour, automotive, figures, planes, ships and space. So something for everybody. Traders there and catering on site. The admission prices are £5 for adults, and children under 16 are free as long as they're accompanied with a full paying adult. MAFVA members are free. Well, I'm not sure what that stands for, but I'm sure you do. No. The address for that is Cowbridge Road, Pontyclun, Cardiff. The postcode, my important challenge, is Charlie Foxtrot 728 Yankee, Quebec. So, yes, see, I've been practicing. And also I cheated by looking up on Google. So,
I was going to say you could see the script.
and then obviously we have the show the same day, which is the Bolton IPMS show, which is is a great event that people should go along to. 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Loads of amazing club display stands, lots of traders with plenty of the latest kits, and I'm sure there's going to be loads of bargains for people to grab. There'll be special appearances from the stormtroopers of the 99th Garrison. That's something I'd like. There's refreshments on site, disabled access and free parking. However, you must make sure that you register your vehicle when you turn up at the entry desk. Otherwise, you will be charged for your parking, and it might be a very hefty bill.
Indeed.
The admission price is £6 for adults. Concessions that's OAPs under 16s is £4. And you can get a family ticket for £15 for 2 adults and 2 children, which is an absolute bargain. There are cash and card payments on the door. The all-important address is the Tough Sheet Community Stadium, which I know is Bolton Wanderers Football Stadium, De Havilland Way, Bolton, and the postcode is Bravo Lima 66 Juliet Whiskey.
Fantastic. And news hot off the press, there are currently 35 trade stands.
Excellent.
So lots of places to spend your money that you get for Christmas. So keep it.
Yeah, all your Christmas money and all that. And if Santa didn't bring you that all important, resin upgrade or aircraft kit or whatever kit, then you can pick it up on a few weeks later.
And the first show, I believe, that Airfix will be attending after their range release in January will be Bolton.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Revell will be there.
Yeah.
With their rest of the 2026 range release. The rest of the year gets announced around about the Bolton show.
Excellent.
And there should be some mock-ups, if not information on what's coming out.
Well, that'd be good. So people should check it out, definitely. If you're getting withdrawal symptoms over this wintry period about going to a model show, definitely go Bolton.
Oh, without question. And as Spencer Pollard said, it's the best one-day show in the country.
Well, I'll let you have that because it's further north than Farnborough, so it's fine.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you very much for that. Enjoy the rest of the holiday season, and I will speak to you in 2026.
Yes, thanks very much, Brownie. Have a good Christmas break.
So for this episode, we are having a conversation about branches for IPMS, having hit SIG in the last episode. We're going to try and alternate it to SIG branch as we go along. Probably not going to happen, but we'll give it a go. So for this first branch interview, we are going to chat with Chairman Wong. Wongy, hello.
Hello, listeners.
Yes, and full disclosure, I'm sat just outside of St Helens, Merseyside, and the local branch chairman for Bolton is recording from where?
Hong Kong.
As you do.
As you do. I'd do anything for that extra listener in Hong Kong on our podcast.
Well, we actually have a fantastic following in Hong Kong, so everyone out there, hi there, thanks for listening. Please share the word.
Absolutely. Yes, indeedy.
Okay, so Bolton IPMS. How long's it been going then? Bolton IPMS, what can I tell you? So it kicked off around May 1999, quite a long time ago. And it was initiated by 3 guys who are still in the club. Well, 2 are anyway. Dave Swift, who's a former chair, Ray Ashworth, who's also a former chair, and a chap called Richard Greenwood, who's not in the club presently. They initially went to meetings at IPMS Warrington, and they thought they'd give it a go and see by setting up one in Bolton if anybody would turn up. And luckily enough, there were, I think, about 15 or 16 members turned up, and it became a club.
Okay. And how many members regularly turn up? Or how many of you actually got in the branch?
Right, so at the moment, we've got 60 paid up members, which is pretty good going. And for the ones who turn up, because obviously people go on holiday or they go off doing other things like go to B&Q.
Or Hong Kong.
Or even Hong Kong, like myself. We do regularly now have around anywhere between 35 to 40 members who turn up for a club meet. And it's brilliant because there is a real buzz these days now.
I must admit, I am a member of the branch, and compared to other branches I've been to in the past, and I'm going back quite a few years now, it always used to be the same few people that turned up and actually having a conversation. But things seem to have changed, and that's probably post-COVID. People want to socialise more.
I think so. And certainly with our club, there is a great mix of age groups. We also have a real mix of genres in terms of people's interests, which helps as well. There's a few people who have now turned to the more boaty type things. We do have a good mix of people, and they're very friendly as well. And they are actually very encouraging, which is great to know. Plus, there is a bar.
And you bribe them with pies occasionally.
We do. We have Bolton's Best, which is called Cars Pasties. There's a plug. And they supply vegetarian as well as meat-based pasties, which for the rest of the world is similar to a Cornish one, but it's a Bolton-based one.
Okay, so where and when does the branch meet?
So the branch meets every second Wednesday in the month, apart from in November, because of Scale Model World at Telford, where we always tend to bring the meeting a week earlier. We actually meet in a rugby club, of all things, and I'll say it's on our website. I'll repeat the website a few times. So for all you listeners who are looking at the club, it's www.boltonmodelclub.co.uk. There you go, said it right. And like I said before, it's a rugby club, a lovely building. It's called The Den on Cunningham Road in West Horton, and that's in Bolton. And we meet from 7:30 p.m. till 10 p.m. or until everybody's got bored and gone home.
So, I know this is a loaded question because I know the answer already, but do you have an annual show?
Funny enough, yes, we have an annual show, which is the first IPMS show of the year. For next year, it'll be on January the 25th, and it's up at the Tough Sheet Community Stadium, or as everybody locally knows it, it's the Reebok Stadium where Bolton Wanderers plays, and it's in the venue there. So that's where we have our show. It's got everything. We've got the clubs, and I mean quite literally loads of clubs turning up. We have a lot of traders. Boulders will know more because he's our show manager. And we've also got a couple of new things there for next year. I can say this, can't I? Yeah, I can.
Yes.
A gentleman who used to be associated with Stock, Aitken and Waterman with all the pop hits from the 90s, Pete Waterman. He is actually a very big model railway person, and he'll be doing some demonstrations for us at the show, as well as awarding some prizes, hopefully, for the competitions that we'll be running there. Now, in terms of pricing, so the show tickets are adults are £6,
And concessions, which is seniors and under 16s, are £4. And we do have a special family ticket, which is £15 for 2 adults and 2 kids.
That's a bargain.
Well, I should increase it then, maybe. Maybe not. Yeah, it is a bargain. We will take card or cash payments on the door, so just get yourself up there. Just to let you know again, it's Sunday, 25th of January 2026, and the theme for this year is we are celebrating 80 years of a Japanese company called Tamiya. Or is it Tamaya?
Tamiya.
Or Tamiya.
Any of the variations, the way you want to pronounce it. Yeah, leaving it there.
Anyway.
Moving on, Swift.
Yeah, let's leave it there.
Well, as
Okay.
Spencer Pollard said, it's the best one-day show in the UK. It's certainly the largest in area and with the numbers of people through the door. So it is a fantastic event. Just when queuing up to get into the event, just remember you'll be stood outside for a little bit, and it's January and it's the north of the UK. So dress accordingly.
Get a big coat, or if you're from the north, just maybe put on a t-shirt or 2. You'll be fine.
Cool.
There you go. Anyway, that's our club. It's weird talking about our club, you know.
It is weird, but hey-ho. And if you can actually publicise ourselves, and what can you do? And finally, for people who didn't have their paper and pencil ready earlier, what's the web address again for people to get in touch?
So the web address is boltonmodelclub.co.uk, and you'll find all the details there, and even my wonderful picture is on there as well.
Yeah, you almost class as a video nasty, but not quite. Okay, thanks, Wongy. I'll speak to you soon.
No worries. See you later, Brownie. Bye.
Do you want cutting-edge detail for your kits? Then take a look at Phase Hanger Resin Accessories, run by USAF veteran Mike Reeves. With real-world aircraft experience as a crew chief, Mike knows exactly where accuracy counts. And today, he's bringing that knowledge to life with precision 3D printed parts. From seamless intakes and nozzles to dropped flaps, pods, pylons, and cockpit upgrades, Phase Hanger's prints capture the crisp edges and fine detail that limitations in injection molding just can't reproduce. From 1/72nd to 1/32nd scale, you'll find add-ons from Cold War classics to the latest frontline jets with frequent new additions to the product range. Every piece is designed by modelers, for modelers, and faithfully reproduced on state-of-the-art printers and shipped worldwide, and are ready to drop straight into your next build. With additions to the product line landing all the time, there's always something fresh to elevate your next build. Explore the full range at phasehangerresin.com and follow Phase Hanger on Facebook and Instagram for regular updates and inspiration. Phase Hanger Resin Accessories, authentic detail designed with a veteran's eye and available to modelers everywhere. Phase Hanger is a proud sponsor of the Beyond the Box Art podcast.
Right then, Benchmates, we're joined by someone who brings a rare mix of hobby passion, real-world experience, and laser-focused eye for realism. Born in 1970 and has been building since he was barely tall enough to see over the workbench, our guest began life as an aircraft modeller before taking a sharp turn into armour, thanks in no small part to his career in the Australian Army. Serving in the Armoured Corps in roles spanning cavalry reconnaissance to full-blown tank operations, he's lived and breathed the machines most of us only build in styrene. And he spent years translating the frontline experience into teaching, training, and helping modelers push their skills to the next level. 2 years ago, he launched Black Hat Scale Models on YouTube, and since then he's become a trusted voice for anyone chasing true realism, breaking down techniques, sharing hard-earned knowledge, and building a community of modelers who want to be the best they can be. So please join me in welcoming Stewart to the show. Hi, Stewart.
Good morning. How are you?
We're doing very well, thanks. And yourself?
Fantastic. It's bright and early here and a lovely summer's day in Brisbane, so couldn't be happier.
And it's a winter's evening here in the UK, and we've just had a warning for snow. So 2 complete contrasts, and obviously we've got Martin over in the States as well, so we're across multi-continents for this one. Anyway, we've obviously just had Telford up here. I believe you were taking part with Scale ACT, and obviously you had the twin jaw digger Dave and the team from On the Bench. How was the show down there for you?
Yeah, fantastic. That was my first time at Scale ACT. It's been running for 25 years, and I can't believe that's the first year I've managed to get away and attend it.
Wow.
Normally work stops me, but this time I blocked out some time to get down. A wonderful event. I think the attendees who go there would certainly say it's the largest, and they market themselves as the friendliest. I have to say that's probably underselling it. It was a great weekend. One of the things I noticed there is that they're trying very hard to expand what's on offer for people who are attending. So it's not just a scale model competition. You know, they had international guests coming over to do workshops, which I participated in, and there's just so much on offer. Yeah, really, really wonderful event.
Okay, I believe you had something like 860 models on the table down there for the show. Was that just the competition, or was that everything inclusive?
I think it was 817 was the competition. There were a few other things there on display. So large, for Australia, certainly a large number. I think in the US, they might consider that to be a regional level show, but so much work and a really high standard. And that's probably the thing that stands out is you'll notice in the hobby over the last 4 or 5 years, there's that the tide has risen all boats and the standard's certainly improving in what's being put on display. I think now we're seeing a much higher level than we were even just 2 years ago. And that was really evident on the table at Scale ACT.
Okay, that's interesting. Obviously, the episode which we talk about, the wrap-up from Telford, hasn't dropped at the time that we're actually having this recording. And I think from memory, the competition area had 853 entries for Scale Model World. And there was probably the best part of 4,000 to 5,000 models on the rest of the tables in the other halls. It's an absolutely massive, and in floor area, it is the largest scale model show in the world. Much to the Americans' annoyance, I think, but it is humongous. And even 2 days, it's not long enough to actually get around to see everything.
Those kind of numbers just prove that the hobby is continuing to grow. It's not in danger at all. I know we do talk about we need more people to come in, the younger generation and whatnot. I find they're evident. They're there. So we certainly saw them in Australian model expos in 2025. So I'm imagining it's much the same maybe in the US and the UK. But certainly there's a lot of middle-aged white guys there too. But the numbers are growing. It's becoming a little more diverse with some of the new genres appearing.
Well, one thing that Nev's commented on in the last episode is there were quite a few younger people at Scale Model World for the first time, or in increasing numbers compared to recently, and also an increase in the Gunpla and Gundam. We had a company doing demos, and you could actually go and build your own Gunpla on one of the stands. And it was a case of this seems to be a way to get a much younger audience into the shows. And when you look at Tamiya and the like are putting a model out, say a P38, they do a run of about 10, 20,000. When you look at the Gunpla, they're actually pushing at 150, 200,000 out of the same molds. And these molds are multicoloured compared to what we're actually used to in our kits. It's a completely different world, but it's also the same world.
Another good thing with the Gunpla thing is it's attracting young ladies as well, because it's not just boys orientated. You're getting a lot of girls coming into that as well, which is great to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I noticed at Scale ACT was they had a juniors category, which was open to all genres. And they, at the awards ceremony at the end of the event, were brought up first. And 50% of the, I'm going to say something like 25 entrants, 50% of those were young ladies. It's great to see that we're tapping into a broad community, not just a narrow focus. So it's really encouraging to see those kind of numbers coming through.
Absolutely. And having never been to the other show that you and Martin have recently been across to in Eindhoven, Scale Model Challenge, what sort of numbers are we looking at for over there? And also the youth element. Is there any evidence of that, or is it all older, should we say, modelers?
There's a number of about 3,000 models, including figures and everything. Does that sound right, Martin?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's a little different, I found, with SMC, that it's a bit more figure-based. There is a reasonable Gundam element. Over here in the States, though, I think it's still quite old-fashioned. There's not as much encouragement to get younger people into it through something like Gundam. And there's a lot of, I don't know, kind of gatekeeping to people are just not into having that. They don't consider it modeling. So there's still a lot of old attitudes here in the States that are preventing, attracting those age groups and those demographics, which is a shame.
Yeah, I think another thing too for us here locally is our proximity to Asia, where culturally a lot of these new genres are coming from, so particularly Japan. And we also have the likes of Lincoln Wright, and Lincoln was at Scale ACT. So he brought a couple of kits, but he was mainly focuses on his publications, which is great. And he does a workshop and he's very available for everyone over the weekend. Having access to that directly for modelers here probably makes a difference for us. And like I said, we can easily tap into that cultural difference coming out of Japan with, Macross and MAK, etc. So maybe there's a difference for us here in that regard.
Okay. Collectively, between the pair of you, over in Eindhoven, how would you actually compare that to your national equivalents?
I think you probably have to take a step back and look at what my experience was, and maybe Martin can chirp in here because he might be a bit similar. My trip to SMC is the first time I've been there. It's an event all in itself. I have to say I'm still kind of processing what I felt from that. It's completely different. It's probably the continuation on from what Euromilitaire used to be, but even on a bigger scale. It's very figure-based because there's a very large number of figures there, but it's not just about figures. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's a very large competition and the standard is exceptionally high in all the categories. And I certainly remember my experience of walking into that event, which is interesting because as soon as I entered, I headed to the competition hall. I actually came across Martin and Alex Clark having a chat outside. And so we got to talking for a while. And then I walked in and I'm kind of overwhelmed by, it's not just what's there and the competition standard, but the way they present it as well. So you're in a dark hall, dark roof, individual lights down the tables, which illuminate all of the models extremely well, and it focuses your attention on them, not what else is in the room. It took me a while to probably come to grips with how that's presented and what you're seeing. It's different. It's the only way I could put it. And I suppose then on another level, when I walked into the competition room, I stood there and then I've got to take a video of all of this and show people that can't come here and see this, what this is about, so I could put it on my channel. So I was standing there panning across the room with my camera, and as soon as I pulled down, I had Grant Maybury from the Triple P standing next to me going, "Oh, I thought it was you," and then we were off on a tangent about saying hello to everyone. So it's just a massively different event, and I found it a little overwhelming to begin with, but the warmth of the people who are there that are willing to grab you and talk to you about anything at all that you want to talk about or they want to ask you about is, again, a little bit different.
I haven't been and would love to go, whether I can go next year or not, because obviously for me it would be a family trip over there. But I have heard that Eindhoven is a cool city in general for a sort of weekend visit. I get the sense that it's probably a bit more artistic, and with the room being the way that it is and the tables being risen and the lamps highlighting, it's more of a showcase event to say the showcase part is the event, the vendors is secondary, very important but secondary, whereas more IPMS based or other type shows we're all in the halls together and it's sort of one big mix. Would you describe it as more of a show, an artistic showcase?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate summation, because you do get the impression, as Stewart was saying, that with the presentation, the way things are on the black velvet tiers and with the focus lighting, it's like a celebration of art. It really does honor the modeler. I mean, pointed at and really focused on the models and the work that's there. And I find that quite a lot with things in Europe, that there's a different attitude to things that we take for granted. I mean, even when it comes to someone who works in a store, you're treated with a bit of respect compared to the UK or the US. There's a different attitude. And I think that carries through to the model show, in that people are seen as artists and what they're doing, especially because there are so many figures and especially fantasy and so on, that it crosses the boundary from just scale modeling into art. Now, what Stewart was saying though about people running into people, I mean, people who we admire and know from videos, and they're all there. and they're all very, very approachable. They're all happy to talk to you. Some of them even know your stuff. They'll remember stuff that you've made. And the social aspect at SMC is something that I have not seen anything like in the US. I mean, yes, people will go for a quick drink afterwards or they splinter into their groups. But at SMC, the social side is almost as important. And it's really refreshing to meet these people and find that they're just approachable modelers and they're happy to help. They're happy to give you advice. It's a very different experience. And because of that, for me personally, I'm probably not going to go to any shows in the US this year and save my money so I can go to SMC next year. For me, it was going to be a one-off visit, but by the Friday night, I decided I was coming back. That's the kind of show it is.
So you enjoyed the evening as much as you did the daytime, the models?
Yeah, it was an experience.
I think another important aspect there, and Martin touched on it before, was the artistic aspect. And I think that's the biggest difference between, say, SMC and even Moson and some of the other shows around the world. It's a celebration of artistic work. And I think that comes out, from my understanding, in the rubric for judging too. They're looking not so much at, say, accuracy of the subjects that are being put up. It's how that piece presents and the artistic work and the endeavour that's the story that's behind it, particularly if it's a diorama or a vignette. But that became very evident in talking to people. That's a serious focus of what happens at that event, which makes it stand out from everything else. The other thing that you mentioned too before was, Dan, the vendors. I've never been at an event where there's not only so many vendors and the breadth of what's there is amazing. It's quite diverse, but they present their stuff and their stands slightly different. Some of them had fantastic pieces done by well-known scale modelers. One of Martin Kovach's pieces was one of the stands. So that was interesting because I've seen it on his videos, but then you can see it in real life and you look at it and think, wow, it is completely different to look at in real life compared to how it's presented on the video. So that was an interesting experience. But the way that the vendors present their stock and talk to you and are willing to chat, I came across a young guy, Jan from Resin Tech Models, and I'd seen Rob Riv do one of his KV4s. So I was hoping to catch up with him, and I did at SMC. And then I got an opportunity to talk to the person who's designing some of the latest and greatest 3D resin print models. And for me as an armor model, that's gold. Being able to talk to that person directly and get instant responses about questions that you have regarding what he's doing and the resins he uses and the process he goes through to design them. Just an amazing opportunity. So, I'm going to rant and rave and say everyone who can go to SMC should go to SMC because it's different. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I totally agree. And I couldn't believe it when I actually got out of the hall, which you cannot walk around and look at the whole thing in one go. It is too overwhelming. You can't take it all in. So I went into the vendors hall thinking I'd get a break. And like Stewart said, you go around to some of the stands and you're looking at the stuff on their stands and you're thinking, why is this not in the competition? I'm seeing stuff as good as in the competition on the vendor stands. Just mind-blowing.
It was probably in the comp last year.
Probably. I know one of them definitely was, an Italian one that I put on my page that was just stunning.
Okay, well, I know I'm definitely going to get my backside across to Eindhoven next year. Is it the same venue? Because I know with the Euromilitary, it used to actually rove around a little bit to different places.
It's the same venue every year, and because of that, they've got everything absolutely dialed in. If you getting to the desk and getting your room and then getting your registration and everything else, it's all super streamlined. I think it really helps having it in the same place. Everyone knows where everything is. The Abbey Bar is legendary. So, yeah, why move it?
Right, you got a tab there already, obviously.
But no problems getting rooms then, because I'm assuming it's going to be really, really mega busy.
You just have to get in early. As soon as they start to say they're going to release rooms, you've got to get in there. I think they said that they'd already bypassed the whole system and just got them booked. But I have friends who didn't get there in time and they were having to stay in Eindhoven, which is not a huge deal, but it's still 20 minutes out.
Yeah, I stayed down the road about a 15-minute drive, which was fine. It just meant that you couldn't hang around the bar and drink all night, obviously, because, problems. But there's so much accommodation available in the local area, it's not really an issue. And I think there's quite a few people that carpool. Once they know you're there and you're in that situation, obviously there's people going, oh, look, if you drive today, I'll drive tomorrow, and it's good for everybody. Again, it's just another one of those aspects. It's a little bit different about going to that event.
Is it a 2-day event?
Yeah, 2 days officially, but people are rolling in on the Friday, so you're catching up, and in some cases you're able to get in and get models in late on Friday, and kind of becomes a 2.5-day event.
Yeah, we had got there on Friday afternoon and ran into the organizer, and he was like, yeah, just go put your stuff out. And at the point I put my stuff out, there was almost nothing on the tables. I came back the next morning and couldn't believe how much stuff was in there. It was absolutely rammed.
I've just realised I'm actually going to be popular immediately I arrive at that event because as I don't drink.
Yes, designated driver.
Anyway, we have a few questions for you, Stewart, if you don't mind, and I'm going to crack them off to start with. You started modelling at around 8 or 9 years old. What are your earliest memories of the hobby, and what first pulled you towards aircraft, and obviously your later shift across to armour?
Yeah, look, I'm fortunate. I have a lot of good memories of my early childhood youth. I didn't have anyone in my family, for instance, that pushed me into it or introduced me to it. It was something that I stumbled across from a school friend, and it triggered me straight away. So aircraft have always been a fascination for me. At one point, I had considered going into the Air Force and I wanted to become a pilot. So that drove me for quite a while in my youth, which would have made me the black sheep of the family, since there's a large number of people in my family who went into the military and they're all Army. So there's that. But I've always had a fascination with aircraft. So I can remember my first build. So I don't know many people who are in my age category now, I'm 55, that could probably remember their first model build, but it was a 172 scale Spitfire. I remember hand painting it with Humbrol paints. That's just what we did back then. There was no use of an airbrush when you're a young boy, and certainly they weren't commonly available back then. So that was the start of something else. I also have another core memory of building a 72 scale Zero, and as I was cutting a piece off, the hobby knife slipped and cut open a knuckle on a finger, and then I went to what you call accident and emergency and sat there for 4 hours because I wasn't prioritised as being important enough for the doctor to come out and see me when there were other things. And by the time he'd seen me, that had closed over, and he said, I don't need to give you any stitches, off you go. So went back home and continued to model. As my focus changed later in life, I became an Army cadet in school, and I changed my focus towards the Army. And then I picked up Tamiya armour kits. And because the Tamiya products were so good in the early 80s, compared to what else was around, it was very easy to build. They just fall together. We all know the joys of engineering with Tamiya products. And that became my focus. And then as I improved my skill set and I got towards the end of school, I was putting pieces into local competitions and doing okay. And then, like everybody, I have a common story. I found everything else as a distraction as I was leaving school. Cars, girls, work, the whole lot. These days, after having done armour for so long, I've found a drive to go back to doing aircraft again. And I don't feel dirty about it. That's another thing. So I'm picking subjects now, which I've been accumulating some wingnut wings kits because I really do have an interest in First World War aircraft. I've got some other stuff, obviously Qatar now with the release of their kits, which is just spectacular. I've accumulated 6 kits now with a couple more on pre-order, and I'm looking at subject matter which is close to home. So I'll tell you, I'm not far off starting Spitfire Mark 1A and doing that as Pat Hughes's aircraft. So if listeners know who Pat Hughes is, he was an Australian ace during the Battle of Britain. Unfortunately, died in September 1940 when he tried to get himself out of his aircraft and his parachute didn't open. So there's a big project in Australia where the wreckage from his aircraft is currently being restored. I believe it's at Haas Aviation in New South Wales. So I want to tell his story in doing a model. And here's an interesting thing. I was online talking with Sam Dwyer about this project, and I was talking to him about the squadron marking that goes on the side of his aircraft on the access door, and how difficult it was going to be to try and replicate that. And Sam's looking, what's it look like? So I sent him a picture and he goes, have you looked in the damn kit to start with? I said, what are you talking about? So one of the colour schemes in that kit is for an aircraft from the same squadron. So I was like, oh, fantastic. I've got the decal there ready to go. I don't even have to worry about trying to come up with a solution for that. So sometimes, you can get buried in the research and, can't see the forest for the trees. So luckily, Sam woke me up to that, and that saved me a whole lot of work. Thank you. Yeah, so that's where I'm at the moment. I'm still plugging away. I generally do one model at a time because I kind of hyper-focus on it, and I find it difficult to spread myself across doing multiple projects at once because it stops and starts me. Although, having said that, if you can see the table behind, I've currently got the Butapans, which I'm finishing, and there's two 16-scale M113s there, which are in pieces as I'm trying to plug through those, possibly for SMC next year.
Oh, that's going to be small hand luggage across into you.
Yes, well, see, that's
1/16 scale?
Yes, that's right. So prior to QMHE here in Brisbane, which is August, I set myself a target to do a 70-day build on a 113 kit, one of the Andy's 1/16 scale kits. And working through that, I was online with Spud Murphy because he was doing his SMC build. So we were bouncing off each other a little bit with doing those builds. And I got that build completed. So that was an FSV, a fire support vehicle conversion of that kit, which was a bit of a masochist build, to be honest, because I used the only 16 scale Saladin turret in existence in the modelling world. And that's from a company in Spain who does a resin conversion. And at the end of the day, the only part of that entire conversion I really kept was the turret itself and the two hatches for the commander and gunner's position, and everything else I scratch built, including the interior and the interior of the hull. So 70-day build, I managed to get that done and get it there, and I was lucky I took a gold at that competition with it. But it's hard. So doing 16 scale, I understand now why Spud talks about he's only got one project in him a year. They are very difficult.
Can I just ask you, Stuart, how many hours a day do you model?
If I'm doing something like that crazy build, probably 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, and maybe on the Sunday I might get a few extra hours in depending on what's happening around the house. But that's hard work. It's a slog. And you honestly don't think you could do that constantly and still have a full-time job. Here when I'm building regularly, I'm probably doing a couple hours a night, 3 or 4 nights a week.
Do you have any issues with spraying something that large with the products we've actually normally used on our benches?
Yes and no. Yes, initially it was interesting to try and work out how I was going to do that and not cause myself some problems here. But you got to break the build up into small components and do them as micro builds, which also probably helps the outcome as well. Because you're turning each of those into a little model of their own, you really focus on the painting and the weathering for those until you get to a later stage, and then I'll put the whole thing together and then do stuff like dust and mud effects as the final stages. It just makes it easier to work with each of the components because they're smaller and I can get a more consistent result out of what I'm doing.
So what products do you use as your main go-to paint?
Oh, here we go. This will be controversial. So Pamir paint's one of my favourites. Still, after all these years, I find they are amazingly consistent in working with them, and I can weather them using different techniques and, again, get a consistent result. But I've also, over time, used products like Mission Models paints, and a lot of people will look at that and say, oh, what on earth are you touching that stuff for? They're terrible. They never work. I always have problems with them. And it's understanding the chemical nature and what you can and can't use with them. And
I didn't know that was still available.
Yeah, quite commonly available here in Australia. There's a distributor in South Australia. So I have no problem with that. I've got a ton of Mission Model paints on the desk behind me. It's just understanding the nature of using that. You can't use Mission Model paints in the same airbrush that you've used an alcohol-based product. The alcohol just breaks down the organic compounds.
I did try them. I found them very finicky, to be honest with you.
Yeah. That's true. If you're looking for a product that's simple, easy to use, doesn't cause you any issues at all, yeah, you'd stay away from them because you just got to be careful how you use those products. But for me, with armor modeling, if I'm looking for something that's going to give an ultra matte finish every time, Mission Models paints, there's nothing else like them. They really do provide that ultra matte finish. You can obviously, and then if you're using other products, you get into the do you use varnishes, don't you use varnishes approach. And with Mission Models paints, you can't put a varnish over the top because any subtle weathering effect that you've got in doing it like burnishing or small marks and stuff like that, as soon as you apply a varnish over the top, they're gone. And then you're just back to a base paint. So Again, that's another approach for me, which I've done over the years.
Aren't you causing yourself a lot of work there?
Yep, absolutely. Yes. Can't deny that.
You don't need to, really. There are other paints available where you wouldn't need to.
I think it comes down to one thing, and this is what I do when I'm teaching other people who are relatively new or inexperienced in scale modeling. Find a paint system that works for you, that you're comfortable in using and gets you the results you want, and then stop listening to everybody else. Because really, at the end of the day, what are you doing it for? You're doing it because you're making something that you enjoy, and if you're getting the results that you really like, then why bother playing around? And I guess that extends also, to be honest, to mixing paints and thinners and stuff. I tend to really stick to using proprietary products with those paints because they're formulated to do it, and you'll get the same. Again, it comes down to consistency. You'll get the same result every time if you're not mucking around and playing with dilutions and different products. That's just my approach to doing it. I'm not saying everybody should follow me because, it's not mission.
No, I always say to people, experiment, do your own thing. You will come across that one way that will work for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think over the years, I've played with a lot of stuff. I do use occasionally. SMS paints are fantastic, and I'm going to plug another Aussie guy, and you've had Scott on the show not so long ago. Again, his products are fantastic too. So I have to look at it. It's kind of horses for courses. Certain projects that I do, I know I'm going to need a certain result, and so I'm using a paint product that's going to get me close to that, and then I can finish off with whatever else I'm doing to weather it.
And one thing that you probably don't know is that since he's been on the show, we have a new sponsor of the show, and that is SMS Paint.
There you go, plugging away for you already, Scotty.
After another bottle on the cheap.
Oh, he's fantastic. You go to the shows in Australia and Scott's there. If he's not there doing a stand by himself for his products, he's supporting a distributor or vendor there. And he's often giving away paint samples at, well, look, every event I've been to a few now in recent times. So you'll have a one-off paint that he's just put together for the show. You can go along and put your hand in the lucky dip box and grab something out and off you go. So yeah, great way to market his products, and they're great products to start with anyway.
Fantastic.
Your service with the Royal Australian Armoured Corps clearly shaped your modelling interests. How has real-life experience with cavalry recon and tanks influenced the way you approach your armour builds?
Great question. This is interesting because we often talk about realism with armour modelling, and I suppose it's across all the genres, but if I focus on that because that's the nature of the question, my experience has led me to see vehicles operating in different environments, but particularly spent a majority of my time inside armoured vehicles on Puckhole Range in Victoria. So if you're from Australia, and you've probably heard of it, it's a very large range, gets very dusty in summer, very wet and muddy in winter, and therefore my memories of what I've seen those vehicles operate in has given me, I think, a pretty good basis for understanding how the environment interacts with vehicles when they're being used and what they look like after being in the Australian bush for weeks on end. So when I operated in a cavalry regiment, organic to each troop, we had infantry in one of the vehicles, so what we call assault troopers. So those guys are dirty, grimy individuals who take for granted the fact that they're being driven around in a nice metal box, and they try and steal your jack rations on you when you're not looking, and they leave dirt and botrytis and their rubbish inside the carrier. Every time they get out, it's like looking at a dustbin. It's ridiculous. So to add all those small little things into the nature of what you're building is, for me, I think it's a bit of a bonus that I have that knowledge and I can then use it to weather and dress up our model. I don't see, for most of us, if you've been in the military and you've seen that, it's just something because you experience it on a very regular basis. I imagine that if you're a civilian and never had that exposure, that it could be difficult to really come to grips with what that is. And you're reliant on photographs in books and online and stuff like that. And some of those can be a little bit misleading. I don't blame people for having a different experience and different viewpoint, but I think it gives me a bit of an edge if I'm doing that. I will say too that, I have a particular style, and over time I'm probably changing that a little bit. And it's not because I think I need to do a certain method or a certain outcome, but I think I'm always looking for now little ways to try and chip away at improving what I'm doing. think I have the exact formula for how a vehicle should look every single time, and I don't want them to. I want them to have a slight variation, but knowing what they really look like when they've been driving around in the Australian bush for weeks on end, I feel it's at a bit of an advantage.
I think you'll know, for example, on an AFV where the high traffic areas are, so to speak. I've never been in the army, and I don't know what the common route would be for someone to climb up on a tank. For example, a Sherman. You can look at a million photographs and see lots of different, I suppose you don't see that many people physically climbing on one. They're either on it or walking along the side of it, whereas your experience allows you to say, right, well, I know these things. Most of us grabbed onto that handle, put our foot on that part and hoiked ourselves up. And that was where you took your first step. So if you have been walking around in mud or stuff, that's where the boots are going to be touching that vehicle first. As a civilian, so to speak, that's what I find difficult to try and sort of make it up as you go along.
That's a really interesting point. I did a Panzer III-N in a desert scheme. And in the video I did for it, I focused on the front of the vehicle and burnished the paint in such a way as to try and demonstrate the common points where crew would mount or dismount the vehicle. And I did an M113 last year, which I didn't focus on my channel, but some people had seen some photos of it and contacted me privately to ask me that specific point. That I'm demonstrating the common places where crew would mount or dismount the vehicle or work around it. So, around the turret, you tend to find that because, say, on the Australian light reconnaissance variant of the M113, you might have, say, a 50 and a 30 cal mounted in the turret. Access to the right-hand side of the turret is blocked. So you're commonly getting in through the left-hand side because you've got a hatch which pivots back behind you. You won't climb over that. You won't climb over the two NGs that block you on the right-hand side. So that's why you go around to the left, because that's the easiest point. So weathering the turret in such a way that shows that you're climbing in and out of there and not just dropping down into the crew compartment underneath, because that's actually not easy either, demonstrates a knowledge of how crew use that vehicle. So when I was talking to those people offline, they're like, oh, that's interesting. I can see you've done that because that's what we used to do. And knowing where the driver would probably mount the vehicle up on that front corner where you put your foot in one spot, hand hold on the lifting eye, and step up onto the top right in front of the driver's hatch, again, demonstrates a knowledge of how people access that vehicle. So if you're looking at realism, that point about how crew interact with a vehicle, that's what people, in my opinion, need to look at when they're looking at photos. The unfortunate thing is it's very difficult to find great photos of used vehicles top down. You get everything because the photographer is on the ground, so everything is their eye height from there. But getting those top down pictures, that's where accessing people who have used those vehicles, or if that's your history, you've worked in the military and you've done that yourself, it's just the next level of being able to capture realism.
Just going on to the 1/16th, do you think portraying and modelling and weathering 1/16th vehicles, that whole process of interaction with the users with the vehicle has to be amplified on a much bigger scale and almost hyper detailed to look good? For example, I did see Spud's M113 at Scale Model World, and I must have looked at it for a good 15 minutes. And I said to him, I think I said this on the last podcast, I felt like I could get inside it and look around and then come back out and then almost look at it as if it was the real thing. Where the smaller scale stuff, you probably don't quite do that as much, but the 1/16th does lend itself to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I totally agree. Spud made a comment some months ago when he and I were chatting, and I'm pretty sure he'd said that on a podcast too. I think two of us were on the OTB podcast talking about armoured vehicles. So he said something along the lines of, in 16 scale, it's less about the build and it's less about the base painting, it's about texture. So you have to overemphasize things like mud and dust and even foliage deposits. Because as you can imagine, if you're walking around areas that have grasses and stuff, some of it eventually gets stuck to the bottom of your boot. You climb on a vehicle, it might deposit a blade of grass somewhere. So you're looking for those really fine, small details that wouldn't necessarily, as you say, be obvious if you're doing, say, 35 scale armour. You just can't replicate it the same way sometimes. But in 16 scale, you have a much larger palette to work with. You have to look for textural differences. So you build up products on the surface of an armoured plate somewhat different to you do if you're doing smaller scale. That's an absolute truth. And, you know, the recent 16 scale build I did, I can self-declare I probably haven't done as well as I could or should. So I'll revisit that at some point because I only gave myself 70 days to do it. So there were compromises made. But you look at spuds, and like you did, Dan, I was at an SMC. I sought that out because I knew who was taking it there for it. And it was next to I think it was an M10 Achilles as well that was on that corner of the thing, which was exceptionally well lit by the overhead desk lamp. So you couldn't miss it. And you walk around the corner and you see those two models there and it's like, wow, that's how you build a master level 16 scale kit. Look at the detail. Spud's interesting because I went and sought him out. He knew I was coming to SMC and I went and found him over with the Four Corners guys. And he talked me through, he had his other previous 16 scale builds there and he talked me through weathering and what his approach is to doing 16 scale. It's a different mindset. You have to, it's almost like you have to do a practice 16 scale build before you do the competition one because you've got to switch your brain from how you do 35 scale to how you do 16 scale.
That's an interesting point. It references the scale and the amount of weathering and texture that you have to put onto the model. It's something I must admit I hadn't thought of previously. When moving, my subject is aviation primarily. It used to be 72nd until the cataracts decided that I was going to have to go 48th as a minimum. Looking at the new Airfix 124th, 109, etc., you're thinking along the same lines that you're talking about, 16th, 24th. We're talking large scale things, and it's a case of there would actually be texture on the mud from the pilot's shoes, etc., getting onto the aircraft and the mechanics. It's not just going to be a 2D scuff anymore. It is a 3D texture that you actually got to try and replicate.
Well, I think the other thing with 16th is you've got to do it as it would really be. On a 35th or a 48th, you can just sort of do a bit of a scrape with your brush or whatever you're using as the mud. But with a 16th, God, it's got to be as it really would.
Bud said to me, he said, because it is so much bigger, you've almost got to do stuff for real. It's hard to explain. So,
like real scale.
Yeah. So I said, how did you do the scratches on the side? So he's got his dust effect, and then it looks like it's driven past like quite a coarse hedge or something. Yeah. Or a bush. And it's really scraped it. And I said, how did you do that? And he said, sandpaper. And he dragged the sandpaper along the side, which I suppose it's sort of scale effect amplified. Yeah, it's an amplified scale effect, I would describe it as. And the smaller the scale, you're trying to replicate.
And I've always thought that the bigger the scale, the better the modeler you've got to be as well. Because I know when I went to 32, I was overwhelmed with it because I didn't feel like my skills were good enough to make it look good. I could get away with it with 72 and 48 because, let's face it, there's only so much you can do in both of them scales. But when you hit the 32nd scale or bigger, you've really got to be pretty good. It's like doing figure painting. I'd love to be able to do it, but that is, to me, real art, you know, to be able to do that. I wasn't a bad artist as a kid, drawing and painting, but not to that level, not to the level some of these figure guys are doing today. It's absolutely frightening.
I think there's two things that underline somebody attempting large-scale projects, whether that's 16-scale armour or 32-plus aircraft. The first thing there would be if you were doing a 24-scale aircraft and you approach the painting and weathering on that the same way you do a 72-scale, so there's an extreme way to look at this, it's going to look underdone. It's just going to look childish, a little cartoonish. It's just not going to suit the scale. So you have to up your game somewhat. And the second point I want to make there is to do large scale items like that, you've got to be brave. You have to push yourself to do more than you think it needs. So using your example you used before there, Mark, about Spud doing the scratch marks there, you know, because you have to build your weathering up in multiple layers, you would probably approach that by doing all the weathering you think it basically needs apply the scratches as it would in real life, because the vehicle would have been used driving around, got all the stuff on it, mud and whatnot, and then get scratched, and then go back and add more weathering over the top of that. Because, as I said, you're building the layers to tell the story and add realism, but you can't just do one and done and just scratch it and leave it and walk away, because that's unlikely to be it unless you're trying to model it as 5 minutes after it had those scratches applied in real life.
Yeah, in the past, I've tried to model an aircraft as it was from the factory, and then whereas you see a lot of guys, they're kind of 4 steps in front, and they've not even put any camo on. They put a lot of stuff under the what's it called, when they put in the black lines in, yeah, all that kind of stuff. Whereas I've actually tried it doing the other way. I think, right, okay, this aircraft has obviously been brand new at some point. Let's go from there. I've never really had great results doing that. I've always had to kind of go back to pre-weathering and all that kind of stuff to get the effect.
Neither approach in my mind is right or wrong. It depends on the result you're trying to get. But if your aim is to produce something that's substantially weathered over time, then everything that you do, from possibly pre-shading to the paint effects you lay down as you start, needs to demonstrate some kind of weathering. Because, for instance, if it's an aircraft and it's not in a hangar when it's not being used, and only goes in a hangar for servicing, so it's spending time on a stand outside a hangar, UV light breaks down paint. The other chemicals that are used in modern aircraft break down paint. So you've got to start that weathering process from the beginning, from the first steps that you're doing. So you have to pre-plan all that well in advance. And certainly on a larger scale project, that's exponentially more important and more difficult to do.
Do you always know what you're going to do and where your model's going to end up? For me, I never do. It's like a design and build for me. I just do things as I go along. Do you know what I mean? I never know how it's going to end up.
I'm one of those people that overplans what I'm doing with my build, which is why they individually take probably longer than I need them to. It's the least efficient part of the process for me. So if I'm working on a specific subject, like I did with the 16 scale fire support vehicle variant I just did, I modeled a very specific vehicle in service in Vietnam, and as having been there for 2.5 to 3 months. So I had great reference photos for it. The vehicle exists at the Armour and Artillery Museum in Cairns here in Australia. So you can literally go there and have a look at it and see what it's like. I mean, obviously paint and weathering is completely different now. It's decades after. But the photographs give me all of that. But I've got photos of it sitting at the museum so I can see what modifications and stuff are done. So when it comes to planning that build, I know exactly how I want that to come out, and I'll work towards that. And if I'm slightly off in a few things, so be it. Nobody else is going to know. They're just going to see the finished product. So that's the kind of the process I use for all the things I do. I don't like building, this is a slight tangent, but I don't like building straight out of the box. And there's nothing wrong with building out of the box, but I want every model that I build to somehow be at least slightly different to what the majority of other people who are building that kit are going to do. It's not a vanity thing. It's just that I think if I'm going to put the effort in to do a really good model, I don't want it to look the same as the next guy who's put it down on a table at a competition. It's not fair on me and it's not fair on them. We can make different choices and let's have some variety.
Okay, so a question from me then. Do you find yourself actually primering the model in the base colour it would have actually been primed in real life? So either a red oxide or something like that. So if you decide you need to do some weathering, you're not just doing the area that you're actually affecting, but you've basically got a base coat of the whole model in that primer. So if you decide to put a scratch in, you haven't got to actually put the effect in post rather than pre.
Yep, 100%. That's exactly what I do, Brownie. So if I'm doing a German armour subject, invariably it's going to be undercoated in red oxide primer. If I'm doing a Russian one, it's probably a grey. See, it also depends on who manufactured the vehicle and which factory it came out of and what they had access to at the time, etc. So yeah, there's a little bit of variation with Soviet stuff. But yeah, I do that. And the reason I do that is because it builds on the realism, on the tonal qualities that the paints that you apply above it are going to show. So if you're doing Dunkelgelb over red oxide primer for a German vehicle, it has a very distinct look. The colour that comes out of the bottle to begin with is something I'm rarely aiming to try and replicate, because I know that if I put it Dunkelgelb from any of the versions of Dunkelgelb over a red oxide primer, the tonal changes there. And that's really important from a realism point of view for me. So that's what I'm trying to replicate, what you would actually have seen on those vehicles in real life. I mean, if I applied that over a cold grey, it really does look different. You put them side by side and there's a noticeable shift at the warmth of the paint on that top layer. So yeah, I've got to be careful. And then because I'm not spraying at 100% opacity on my top coats, it's probably most of the time closer to
A filter?
It's closer to 70, 80% opaque. I'm trying to get the color there, but I'm allowing the tone of what I've done underneath, because sometimes I might be altering the red oxide primer depending on factory it's coming from and what they had access to, what you've seen on real life paint samples. So I've got to put all of that into the equation before I start spraying.
Okay.
Subscribers to your page, and I absolutely love the level of realism that you strive for and the fact that you're happy to spread that knowledge. But when you teach realism in the hobby, what core principles are you coming back to? Fundamentals that you think every modeler should master?
That's dependent on the level of knowledge and skill in the person or small group I'm working with. But if I said, let's just say the average person that I would be giving some kind of instruction to, as far as that's concerned, has a few years of modeling behind them. They do it occasionally rather than as a really serious hobby. They just want something to look a bit better than the average product that gets put out there. So when I'm talking realism with them, I'm talking using appropriate paint tones for the period of the vehicle that they're trying to replicate. So even in World War II, Dunkelgelb shifted 3 times across that period, the tone of it. There's more of an early and a slight mid and a late kind of tone. So if you're doing a 1945 Jagdpanther, you want to be using the tone and just getting them to see that there's some subtle changes in that and how that would affect it. Camouflage patterns is another thing that we talk about quite a lot. So if I'm just going to stick on German armor for a moment, you know, there's the typical tritone paint schemes, there's an ambush pattern, there's the very late war stuff where paint colors were rare, they just didn't have the pigments available to produce all the paints they needed, so you might just see something in red oxide primer and Dunkelgelb, which are the two. And there's the famous as the Jagdpanther at Bovington Tank Museum that was done in that thing, and the Panther that's there that was built post-war by Urami guys. So it's looking at sources and picking something that's roughly appropriate. And how they apply that is based on their skill set. I don't really focus too much on that unless somebody wants to ask me about how they can improve how they spray or whatever. I let them do that. And it's a process of self-discovery, which I think is also important because you need to make a lot of mistakes so that you can do things and learn from it and then work out how to do it better. I'm not about, when I'm teaching realism, about saying this is absolutely how you have to do this, but this is the process of research and how you go about finding what you need to do. I think that's a more important lesson to learn. I can demonstrate the books that I've got on the shelves here and say, if I want a subject, I might have a specific couple of books on that particular vehicle or some generic stuff and find some individual photos or show them where on the internet you've got better sources than just typing in Jagdpanther 1944 and then seeing a whole lot of stuff come up which is totally irrelevant. The research process is something I do focus a bit on so that they can have access to the right information or more accurate information than just me saying this is 100% the way you do it, because what's to say I'm right?
Yeah. You know, I always say when people say, no, it's not this way, it has to be this way. It was the end of the war. They were running out of stuff. The factories are getting bombed. They used what they could find.
That's absolutely right. And that even extends into Cold War vehicles as well, because there was a 1945 to, say, 1965, you had a 20-year period where there was a massive amount of experimentation going on in aircraft, even ships. So we need to look at it and say, just because a kit comes out in a certain variant doesn't mean that you can't modify that for 3, 4 or 5 other variants around that vehicle, some of which never saw service, but they certainly got tested. So I try to say, don't limit your focus just to what the kit shows you. You can go out and find other variants of it and modify what you're doing so you have a unique vehicle that's to your taste.
That, to me, that's the great thing about doing your own research is the more you dig, the more you find, and you find all these weird little offshoots and variations and well, that being in the army, field modifications and stuff that's probably never even, especially with the Germans at the end of the war, never got written down. Stuff happened and changed and they just used it, and that was that.
Yeah, look at Tiger 131 as an example. There's a U-shaped metal foot clamp thing on the front of the glacis plate that's been welded on there as a field modification. So it's not a common field modification either. So interestingly, of all the Tigers that have been photographed, how many of them have that foothold welded on in that place? Maybe a couple.
Yeah, exactly.
This is where the thing is, when you're looking at photographic documentation as a primary research tool, you need to look in detail. You need to really scan over those and look for it. And of course, most of those are in black and white, which just makes the process harder. But as you do more of it, you get used to subtle tonal changes in paint and where things are. And an out of focus photo, you might find another version of that photo or a different angle somewhere else that you research, and then you get a better view over it. So yeah, it's just one of those things is look harder, spend a little bit of time researching if realism is important to you. And I do get that there are plenty of people who are like, no, I just like building for the fun of it and I'm just going to do it as it comes in the box. And I say all power to you. That's your direction, go for it.
Absolutely.
But if you want to do something a little bit different or you want to be a little more focused on realism, there's certainly a lot of gateways to being able to do that.
I'm just, in the next few weeks, I'm going to start one of those Vietnam gun trucks. So I've been looking at videos, looking at pictures, and it's good. Yeah, mother's worried.
Brilliant.
And you can't even find two that are the same because they're just welding stuff on and putting stuff together. It's all total field modification.
What kind of truck was it? Was it just a standard, 2-ton truck?
It was an M, I think they are, but they basically welded bits of steel all over them, and they actually took guns from down helicopters. They stole miniguns and grabbed old 50 cals. There's pictures of people with Thompson machine guns.
Did they do one with a quad?
There's one with a quad. There's other ones where they took, Stewart was talking about the M113. They just took the body of a 113 and stuck it on the back of a truck.
Yeah, Clayton Lockerbie did a gun truck, and I sent him when he was doing that build some photos of M13s that were just effectively bolted to the chassis on the back of those trucks.
It's nuts.
Which is hilarious because the armor on them is fine for small arms fire, but it doesn't produce that much protection against an RPG. Those gun trucks had massive armor plates on the sides of them. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are they mainly convoy protection?
Yeah, so I think what happened early on was they had a convoy that had a lot of avgas trucks that got taken out by the North Vietnamese. And after that, they realized they had to protect them a bit better. So they started building these trucks and adapting them, and they would run up and down the convoys. The idea of them was massive firepower as quickly as possible. That's why they stole the miniguns off the helicopters, and they would just pour massive amounts of lead into areas just to quieten things down.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for high volume firepower. So
I'd love to see you build one of those.
That's an interesting choice. Not something that I would probably normally consider, but not out of the realm of possibility, I can tell you.
What scale's that going to be? Is that 35th?
Oh, yeah, it's not going to be 16 scale, is it?
I don't know.
That would be cool. That would be really good.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Full scratch build, Martin. Go and challenge yourself.
Okay then, moving on. Mark.
You've worn the uniform. You've operated the real vehicles. What are the common mistakes modelers make when building armour? And how do you help people to avoid them?
Geez, you put me on the spot here.
That's what we're all about.
Gee, I think, look, so I look at it from the point of view of I really like realistic results on armour. It's just the way I look at it. So I think people, probably the most common mistake is not realising when you're weathering these things just
how it actually looks.
The things that we talked about before, yeah, it's the final look of it, what they really look like. And then on top of that, how crew use them. So it's easy to paint something and then throw some dust and dirt effects on it and say, yep, that's done, that's great, that's weathered and nice. But I think the failing point, if you were going to call it that, is that you've really got to look at how do crew operate that vehicle, what do they do with it? And in the environment that you're trying to replicate, how muddy is it? Where does the mud go on? How do the tracks sprayed up over the back of the vehicle, because that's the first contact point is underneath, and then it sprays up towards the rear. You do get little pockets on certain vehicles where the mud will run along the tracks and get deposited elsewhere under sponsons and whatnot. It's about understanding the depth of how that's applied to a vehicle as it's being operated. If it's a vehicle with a hatch on the rear, say a Bradley or an M113 or whatever, an FE438, when the crew get in and out of those, they touch handles, they touch the wall of the vehicle next to the hatch. Their equipment rubs against it. Their boots touch the bottom of the access point where they go in, and they'll wear that back to bare metal. So thinking about how people use them, what they store in them, I think that's the one part that a lot of people probably don't get quite right, and what gets stored in them. So I've seen some interesting things where people have objects that would not normally be stored in a vehicle sitting on seats, just because that's...
Or sometimes you see something, you think, how's that actually hanging on there? It just looks like it's obviously just glued on. It's not tied on or strung on in any way.
That's exactly right. So it's putting a little more thought into, if you're putting a lot of stowage on something, the crew don't want to lose it. And when you're driving around, the vehicles bounce around. So you can't just throw ammunition crates and ration cartons and stuff on the back of a Sherman. The stuff gets tied down. And often what crew will do is throw a tarp over everything and then rope it down, because that's far more secure.
Stop mud as well and all the rest of it, yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it's great that I've seen in recent years, and I'll talk about storage as one thing, a lot more focus from armor modelers putting storage onto things, but that, as you said, they're not looking at how it's secured, where it's going, what it is. Why would the crew put barrels, like 40-gallon drums of fuel, sitting on the back of the vehicle? Because if you look at photos, it isn't that common, and it would be a short-term need to move something from point A to point B, because replenishment vehicles like trucks and stuff carry most of that. So you don't drive around with a whole lot of petrol sitting in a big device on the back of it, just making a perfect medium for knocking that vehicle out. Yeah, I'm just saying, it's not that it doesn't happen, but it's not as common as I would suspect would have happened based on the photographic evidence I've seen. So again, that's another thing. So it's just references, looking at how that vehicle actually would be operated. Yeah, I think that's a focus that people could do a little bit more and would vastly improve the story behind the models that they're building.
Definitely. Okay. Boulders.
So you've got a YouTube channel and you've only been doing it for 2 years, but it's become a standout resource. What pushed you to finally hit the record button and put your work out there?
Well, it's kind of an extension of what I was doing off air. So I have a couple of different small groups of friends who like to model, and some of them are in hobby clubs here, but most are not. Over a number of years pre-COVID, I found I was doing little bits of work with them because they were interested in the kind of models that I produced. They wanted to up their skills. They wanted to learn a bit more. After COVID, watching a couple of the channels that came out, Night Shift, obviously, and LPJ Models in your neck of the woods and a couple of others, I thought, you know what, YouTube's a great way of doing this. I was producing little snippets of videos for them of stuff I was doing on my workbench and posting it onto a messenger group so they could see it. And I thought, there's a better way of doing this. Why not put it on YouTube? Then more people potentially can access it. And if I've got anything really interesting to share, then there's greater value for a community in that regard. My thought became, I'd like to build a community around scale modeling here in Australia. There's certainly other people who are great YouTube content creators. So great shout out to my good friend Clayton Lockerbie. People that are doing that work, but I want to do it slightly differently. Rather than just do what was commonly seen, i.e. build a model from start to finish and show the project, and that's what you're repeatedly putting up. I wanted to focus on doing some of that because that's of interest to people, but also include the things I was doing for that small group. Some technique stuff, some inbox reviews, talking about different aspects of armor modeling. Clearly that's going to change because I'm stepping out of just armor modeling now and I'm moving towards back to aircraft, and I've just bought my first 2 Machine & Krieger kits because Lincoln hit me up, so they're coming soon. So look, there's some interesting information I've just dumped out for you ahead of time. But really starting YouTube was a means to an end. It was a way to produce information and reach a wider audience with what I was being asked to do already. Seems to have worked.
Absolutely.
Your channel focuses heavily on sharing techniques rather than just showcasing finished builds. Why was that teaching first approach important to you?
I think it probably comes from my own experience. If you don't have access to quality information, and I'm not saying quality information, but I'm saying it's all information is of some quality. You can pull bits and pieces out of all the things that you can find. But my experience had been, until COVID hit, there wasn't an enormous amount of quality content out there on techniques for modelers. It's different if you go to your local club and you sit down and you've got the benefit of the people who are in the room with you. But that's your limitation. Their skill set, their experience, and their ability to teach. I think the biggest thing, if those people are gatekeepers or they don't have a good ability to pass on the information in an accessible and learnable way, then you're not getting anything as far as that's concerned. You've got the social content of going along and doing some work on your own kits, but you're probably not picking up enough to expand your own skill set. So teaching first was a really important thing for me because I felt I probably had the ability to pass on information in a way that some people could get some benefit from it, and picking subject matter that was widely usable became important. So I look at techniques as in this way, that somebody eventually at some point has invented or stumbled across a technique. It's not just a thing that everybody suddenly finds, but somebody will come across that. And hairspray chipping, for instance, we'll take that as an example. So it's been around 20 odd years. A lot of people are familiar with it. They may have seen the results of somebody who uses it in their work, but I still find it's not well understood. It's because you're using something that's a chemical process, not just a method. So when you explain that chemical process and you demonstrate slowly and clearly not only how to do hairspray chipping well, but the foibles around it and how you can easily stuff it up and where those problems exist, people learn quickly. So when I did a video on hairspray chipping, I've had there's some comments there from people about what they thought and they enjoyed it and whatnot, but I got a lot of private messages from people saying, I've never had it explained to me like that, thank you. Can you tell me more? Is there anything else I need to know? So it starts a conversation and people learn from that. I think that's as important as me just putting up a video that says, here's how you do it, because that's only maybe a third of the information they actually need. They need all the stuff about, here's how you make common mistakes. This is why you get paint coming off in sheets, or the paint doesn't come off at all. Or if you apply too much pressure with your brush, or you apply too much water. So these are all the variables around the process. But if you're not taught how they can muck up your result, you can't resolve the issue later on, learn from it, and then improve your skill in that technique. I actually heard, I can't remember who it is, it might have been John Bonani in their latest podcast talking about hairspray chipping. And he said he didn't get great results from it and really didn't use the technique very often until somebody he knew told him that, no, you hold the object at arm's length from you and then mist on a couple of fine coats so that you're, at least a half a meter away from the object that you're trying to cover. That's how you get those fine results out of using that technique. And then it all clicked for him. And he went, this is fantastic. Now I understand how that process works. And that's it. The light bulb moment happens for people when you give them the right information in a digestible fashion.
Yeah, for me personally, videos like yours are a godsend because I've got 5 years in, and seeing stuff explained so carefully and professionally and in a common sense way is a huge shortcut for those of us. A lot of us are COVID modelers. That's when we got back into it. It's a huge shortcut. And as someone who teaches for a living, I teach snowboarding for a living. As someone who teaches, I cannot understand people keeping techniques to themselves. Like you said, a rising tide raises all boats. We all get better together. And why let people make mistakes that everyone else has made in the past just so they can earn their stripes, so to speak? So thank you for what you do.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. And you basically hit the nail on the head. It's holding information back so that you rise above others by standing on their shoulders and pushing them down doesn't work. And it's never worked. And that old school way of you have to do your stripes because I did it, and you have to flog away for 10 years banging your head trying to do something because that's what I had to do, that's outdated. And frankly, if people who are like that probably need to have a good hard look at their own motivations for why they're in the hobby to begin with. But having said that, the positive outlook from that is, my position is, if I learn a technique and I make it work for me, I'm more than happy to share it with everyone in the world, because if everyone can build a better model than me, then at least I've achieved something or helped them achieve something, because, they can be the best modeler that they can be. If you want to take a technique and try and own it yourself and even make a financial gain off that in some way, I think that's disturbing. And I also think it's unfair on the rest of the community who are just trying to build good models and have a good time at doing it. And that's what I want to foster.
Can I just ask, is it just the hairspray you would use, or what do you think of the chipping solutions that you can get as well?
I've used quite a few of those, Mark. I think they're a great product if they're used correctly. And when I say used correctly, sometimes you might have to thin them a little bit if you're using it in an airbrush, because it also depends on the pressure that you're using to spray with. And again, it comes down to technique. So if you're spraying it close, you're going to flood the surface with them and get a poor result. So like hairspray chipping, you've got to move it away from you and spray to get a finer mist. It's all about application as much as the product.
The further away, does that give you a smaller, more controlled chip?
Yes. Yeah. So what is happening is, the further you move away, up to a certain point, obviously, but if you're at about half a meter away from the subject, the paint, or in this case, the chipping fluid, atomizes in such a way that you'll get very fine dots that are landing on the surface of it. So as the term I use is misting. So if you're misting it in a fine mist and you do that a couple of applications, as you chip away and remove the paint, it'll come off in much smaller, finer removal from the surface. If you do it really close, you run a risk of literally flooding the surface. And then when that dries on and you lift off, it'll come off in sheets. Yeah, which is obviously not what you want, unless that's what you want. But yeah, for most of us, that's all the outcome we want to do.
Apparently, the cheaper the airspray, the better. I remember somebody telling me, buy the cheapest whatever airspray you can get hold of. Don't go for the really expensive stuff.
Well, I think you're going to save a few dollars if you're buying a cheaper version, of course.
Because it doesn't work on me, as you can see.
I was going to say that most of the people who have problem with actually using the hairspray product, 50% actually don't have any hair whatsoever and probably never use products.
Yeah, that's probably true too. Look, I don't know about the cost versus reward factor there.
What do you use?
I followed Michael Rinaldi's system where I started using Tresemme hairspray because it suits using it for mission model paints because of the lack of alcohol in it. Look, if you're doing almost anything else, lacquer paints are probably the exception here, because once you spray those down, you have a very, very short working time to get them to lift off because they bite so well into the surface underneath. So I would say if you're going to spray lacquer paints as your top coat, you need to flash dry it. So I would use a hairdryer just to quickly flash dry it. Give it a couple of minutes and then start to do the chipping. But if you're using any acrylics, you want them to dry off well, and so maybe give them an hour or so and get into that. Again, this is one of those questions where it comes down to what specific paint are you using and what outcome are you trying to achieve. So my suggestion is for everyone, the simple piece of advice I've got would be get yourself some paint mules, some cheap kits, stuff that you've sat on your shelf for doom and you've decided is never going to be finished or whatever, and turn it into a paint mule and practice these techniques on them until you're happy with the outcome you get.
I've got a KV2 because I've switched a lot of my 35th scale armor to 48 scale, and I'm doing a KV2 at the moment, and I do use lacquers. But what I want to ask is, can I spray it in lacquers and then I want to do a whitewash, a winter whitewash on it? Can I still use the reductive chipping technique if I say use a Tamiya flat white for my snow technique? Would that work over the top of the lacquer? So I suppose it's lacquer first and then the hairspray and then the snow effect, the whitewash over that, because I need to wear the whitewash because a lot of the reference photos do show it as wearing off very quickly. Will that still work?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things here that people probably also need to consider is if you're doing reductive chipping techniques, so either hairspray chipping or odorless thinner reduction, you need to be very much aware of the underlying paint so you don't really activate them. and then obviously wash those away as well. So in this case, you're talking about using lacquer as your base paint, which is completely different to using a hybrid acrylic. So yeah, no problem at all. It's almost like you've got a barrier between the paint layers, which therefore means that you're not going to reactivate the lacquers. Lacquers are very difficult to reactivate unless you're using lacquer thinner. So no problem at all with hairspray chipping. In most hairsprays, you've got denatured alcohol as the active ingredient, and it won't affect lacquer paint. So perfectly safe to do that, Dan. You've got other choices too, but you might be comfortable in using Tamiya paints, but I would also suggest have a look at the Atom range of acrylics that have come out last year. They also have a washable white in those, which is great for using in that kind of application. Again, depends on how washed off you want that winter white to look, whether you want it to be quite stark, strong, or you want it to be well worn so it's washed off a bit. And reductive chipping of Atom paints using odorless thinner is also a great way because it chemically breaks the paint down but won't affect the lacquer paint underneath in any way. So that's another way of doing it, and you might get a finer result. So that's something you could achieve. I've done a video on that. I like to push that one a little bit because it's very different. It's a relatively new technique, and the guy who discovered that, Fred, amazing discovery, and I thank him for letting everybody see that. But that's another way of doing it too.
When you're planning on doing that one?
I think I want to display it at Bolton as people saw it at Telford, because I really enjoy showing off the photo etch bins and the Mr. Surface cast metal techniques that I did on it.
I've got a bottle of that washable whitewash you can have. I've got 2 bottles of it. I got given a bottle. You can try it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to. So I'm going to display it as it is, as a naked tank, as they call it, or whatever the description is. And then on my second round, start it then as a new project and go, right, now I'm going to paint this thing, which is obviously what I need to plan my winter wash on it. Because the photo that I've got is from a really good reference book on KV2s, and there's a German figure standing next to it. And this, I mean, he looks like a 148 scale figure standing on a 135th tank.
Is it one of them with a great big massive turret, big square turret thing?
They're absolutely huge. Yeah, they really were an absolute slab-sided beast of a thing.
We might have a paint off, Dan. I'm not far away from starting a KV project myself, though I was planning on doing a winter whitewash. So I've got the Object 222 conversion kit for the KV1 that came from Resin Tech Models. So I'm going to do that and do a winter whitewash over that, because I haven't done a winter whitewash project for a while. So there you go.
Buddy build.
Yeah, winter whitewash KVs, rock on.
Yeah.
Stuart, you've been running a YouTube channel for a while now. As someone who's got a few videos on YouTube, I understand how much time and effort that must massively make. So what surprised you most about running your YouTube channel, either creatively, technically, or community engagement?
Time involved to put each video out, I think, would probably be the most surprising aspect that I found. It's basically a second hobby. If you put a video out, or if I put a video out that's 30 minutes long, for instance, and there's a lot of editing involved and chopping up bits of video to go in it and whatnot, it's probably a full day's project for me to sit down in front of the computer and do that. And when I first started to get engagement and to get my name out there with a brand for people to watch, I was doing a video a fortnight and at one point a video a week. And that video a week workload is difficult, very difficult to maintain. And honestly, I don't know how. Well, no, I do know how Martin Kovacs did it, because he became his full-time job, so he had the time to do it. But if you're like me and scale modelling is a hobby and you have a full-time career and therefore all the other commitments that come with that post getting home from work, it's very difficult to not only build the models, but video them, edit them, and get them out in a timely manner. So you'll notice that most good content creators who produce good work still are not putting stuff out weekly, not even fortnightly, because the trick is you can't put a great working video out every fortnight. So you intermingle those with other kinds of content which are quick and easy to produce, like an inbox review or a quick discussion on what the best new model kits are that are coming out this month or whatever, because it makes more efficient use of your time and keeps content coming out. And it's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a perfectly good and valid way to run your YouTube channel, because you'll burn out if you're trying to produce models to a high standard, video them and edit videos and keep them interesting. Otherwise, it just looks like you're literally doing the rinse and repeat every time that you produce something.
Yeah. It's funny, I found the same thing just on my Facebook modeling page, that I pull stuff out from the past or just have a few shots randomly here and there just to kind of keep things rolling. But yeah, that makes complete sense. And I understand now why I see people have that kind of variety on their feed. It makes sense.
I've had recent content creator discussions, and that subject comes up a lot about the time involved to produce stuff, which is also why you see the rise of AI produced videos in other subject matter on YouTube, because it's easy to use AI to produce videos on non-artistic creative work. It's easy to do that and pump out videos and get 100,000 views and get some money in the bank. But I don't know any serious scale modeling YouTuber that thinks that's their aim. What they're trying to do is produce interesting content because they're interested in it to begin with, and it's their work, and they're artists, and they want to see other people get exposed to that and benefit from that as well.
Yeah. You've built across both aircraft and armour. Are there any techniques from aircraft modelling you still apply to AFVs or vice versa?
I broadly think that anyone who has a skill set which is strong in any genre can do work across multiple genres. I think that's perfectly achievable and there's no issue. Yeah. Once you get to a certain point, then the secrets are out and you pretty much learn how to do the basic stuff. So that's great. Specific techniques, I would say as an predominantly armour modeler, there's weathering techniques that we can use on aircraft that mean that the end result you get will be different to somebody who's just been an aircraft modeler all their life. And it's probably a trigger point for some people. Some people like aircraft to be really clean, whereas my viewpoint is always they're like every other piece of equipment. They get used, they get dirty, they get worn, and most of them are quite worn. So particularly if they're in service in combat, you don't have time to keep them nice and pristine and stuff. Stuff happens, you need to turn it around and get it back out for another job. So the same applies in reverse. So if you're a really good armour modeler, there's techniques on how to get detail to pop. So pin washing and how you focus your painting can certainly make a difference with armour modelling. So once you get those skills, it's great. You can play with them in all those genres.
You might not like this question, but is there one particular thing in modelling you think you might be a bit weak at? Like for me, my deckling is terrible. I am absolutely murdered with decals. Terrified of them.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I can have decal errors all the time, and the common one for me will be getting silvering occurring. So getting that air out from under the decal can be a problem. And I'll be honest, I don't think, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone, no matter how good their skill set is with applying decals, gets a perfect result every time. You might see that happen on a YouTube channel where they lay it down and it looks perfect, but the thing is, the one they did before might have lifted.
How many times has he done it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So as far as skill sets for me, yeah, decaling can be a challenge from time to time. And usually it's because I might pull out something which is a bit older. And so the adhesive on the back of the decal might be not quite as good as it was when it was first released. And then I haven't applied because of the type of paint I'm using. So if I'm using Mission Models paints, I may not have applied enough setter to try and pull it down with adhesive to begin with. And then as I'm applying chemicals over the top, that might help. But that just makes the silvering worse sometimes. So, yeah, that's the thing for me. But my biggest...
And I suppose like most modelers, you have bad days and good days.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And let's face it, we're editing our videos, so we're usually just putting out the best of the best content so that you keep rolling on. But having said that, Dave Goldsmith made a comment to me early on in my time as a YouTube creator of he likes to see us when we make mistakes and show why we've made mistakes and what we do to fix them. And I think that's an important thing as well. So if I make a mistake and I think there's value in showing it so that people can learn from it, I certainly to try and include those. So getting back to your question, the other thing which probably is my greatest weakness is figure painting. Yeah. And a plug for Calvin Tan. I was lucky at Scale ACT because he ran a workshop for 14 people to figure painting. And that was a blind auction to get in there. And I made sure I bid high so I wasn't missing that opportunity. Because coming from Australia.
What scares you the most? Is it the skin tones? Is it uniform? Or is it the whole...
Yeah, skin tones, 100%. Yeah, getting faces to look like faces, getting hands to look like hands that aren't big sausage fingers or look like old people's hands or something. But the faces was the hard part. And that workshop focused on that a lot. So,
yeah. I do. I mean, they tend to look like they've been in a makeup salon for the day.
Yeah, I get zombie faces and stuff like that.
too much mascara and all the rest of it. I think, oh God, what am I doing? Start again.
Yeah, exactly. I can do uniforms and all that's pretty well because there's not a lot of variation.
Things like that have never really worried me that much, to be honest with you. It's one of them things where I've always found that if it doesn't overly matter to me, I always manage to be quite successful with it. But then when I'm really trying to make something look really good and pop, it's just a nightmare.
I'm hearing you, Mark.
And you have airbrushes spit and sputter just like the rest of us do every now and again?
Probably not so much these days because I'm getting a lot better with understanding the paints that I work with.
What do you use?
So I have a couple of, my main one's a Gallery GHAD 39. So it's a 0.3 nozzle in that, which is for armor modeling and aircraft modeling at the scales that I'm working at. It's fantastic. It literally does everything. I don't need to run multiple airbrushes with different size needles. I do have an Awada with a 0.2 mil nozzle for doing detail work, but I'm rarely using it these days because I'm getting good control out of the Gallery brushes.
So clean, aren't they?
Yeah, they are actually. They are pretty good. The design of the base of the cup and where it feeds down into the body is really good. You can really clean those out quite easily. I'm fastidious about flushing thinners through them every time I've finished a colour, and I probably break them down after each major project to give them a good clean. So they stay in great condition and they don't fail me. But then I'm also a bit of a nerd like that because I've got 4 airbrushes, so they're all for different purposes.
I've probably got 24. I'm one of these that likes to buy them, try them, and then not bother with them again.
Yeah, right. I think trial and error over the years. I've never had some really good ones from Harder and Steenbeck, but to be honest, for the money, for what I'm doing, I've never found that I need to invest that much in an airbrush. And then when Gallery released their products, I gave them a good try. And
I think I need to get with the program. I've only got one.
You need to go out and buy some more airbrushes or get someone should sponsor Martin. Someone should come along and sponsor Martin.
Yes, there you go. Good idea.
I'm here for you, mate. Yeah, so if there's any airbrush companies, Martin Drayton, get out there, get him some airbrushes. He wants them. He needs them.
Thank you.
Stuart, what's next for Black Hat scale models? Any upcoming projects, tutorials, or subjects that you're excited to dive into?
I'm glad you've asked that question. Right, here we go. So I've literally, since I've come home from it started at SMC. I've started buying bits and pieces from all the vendors for some projects I want to do. They're all starting to arrive in here, so that's helping me. So big projects coming up. I was lucky at SMC to meet Kristen from Gotha Force. So if you and the listeners are familiar with Gotha Force, they are producing high quality resin World War I aircraft. So they're full resin prints. And I was exposed to them a little bit earlier in the year, and having seen him on the stand and looking over the products, I'm really excited. They're using a lot of different resins for different parts of the aircraft to get some flexibility in certain parts or to get more rigidity in, for instance, the wings and the fuselages. Because my greatest concern about going to full 3D prints was how are they going to react over time? Are they going to soften and wings droop, or is there going to be warping or whatever? I spent a lot of time with Kristen talking about the technology and engineering for their kits. So I've purchased one of those at great expense, and it's currently winging its way over from Europe. That'll be a feature on the channel because they did the Fokker D7, which is one of the most well-known aircraft ever produced. They've done some German variants, which is fantastic, but they've also introduced a fictional Japanese squadron using Japanese markings. And so in that kit, there's a convergence between German lozenge pattern camouflage and Japanese markings. And down the side of the aircraft is the story of the Seven Ronin. So if you're familiar with Kurosawa's movie, they're in on that. So that interested me a lot. So that's coming up. I've also got a couple of Kataro kits I want to build. So the Mark 1A Spitfire is coming soon, and I'm going to focus that on a build for a famous Australian ace during the Battle of Britain, Pat Hughes. I mentioned that earlier in the podcast, so that's going to be a build. And the Hurricane, when that comes out, I'm going to do a build of another Australian ace, John Cock, who had 10 kills during the Battle of France and Battle of Britain, and he survived the war. And I've never seen anyone build his aircraft, so I'm going to have a stab at doing that one as well. So there's 3 aircraft that are coming along, and I've got, as I mentioned earlier, the Object 222 KV1 variant. So it's a turret that was a paper model. It was supposed to be the first upgrade to the KV1, but they went to the much larger turret and made the KV2. So that's going to be of interest for me. And Resin Tech Models also do a fully 3D printed KV4, which again was never produced during the war. It was supposed to be. It nearly got there. Again, was a paper product, but they've done a full resin kit of that. Rob Riv did that on his channel, that build. I've got the only one that I believe has come into the Southern Hemisphere, so that's on my desk at the moment. So I'm going to have that built and showcased on the channel too. So there's a few things there that are set. And then on top of that, next year, I've got a massive number of other products that I need to get through, including a couple of group builds and stuff, and I'll feature those on the channel hopefully as well.
Some turnaround there, Stewart.
Yeah, look, when I was younger, I really, really enjoyed aircraft modelling, and it was just because of when you're young, your interests chop and change to what's the next shiny thing that gets thrown in front of you, and I jumped to armour, and I really loved that because, as I said, the engineering to me kits was brilliant, so it was a great change. Now I want to get back to doing aircraft. I played around with a couple of 72 scaled things at home and went, yeah, I'm good for this. So now I'll invest money and time into getting those kits and building those up.
Stewart, are you going to take this Resin World War One? Are you going to take that to SMC?
Funny you say that. I'm hoping I can build it well enough to be able to do that and take it back and show Kristen and enter it into standard class and just pop it up there. The thing is that full 3D printed kits for aircraft are not common. They're certainly not in large scale. The greatest aircraft of the Battle of Britain, the Bolton Defiant, does exist as a full 3D print. And I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, obviously. Yeah. I've looked at that kit and thought, I might jump on board with that one. But then I saw the Gopher Force stuff and see, with talking to Christian, just how they've engineered it and done this. Gas Patch Models is printing all of them for them. So if you're familiar with Gas Patch, the quality of their work is outstanding.
You're going to have fun transporting that from Australia to Europe. Good luck, mate.
I don't want to think about that yet. That might be sitting on my lap for 24 hours all the way over there.
That'll cause the wingman to walk with the heat coming on your lap for that distance.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but it's like everything. Where there's a will, there's a way. We'll get there. I probably want to do that as a small diorama. Going to SMC and seeing that zero, that one. But yeah, right. Okay, so the idea of having the foliage underneath coloured and stuff was something that I thought about doing for one of my own builds, and then I saw that there and went, yeah, look, that really is a great design, but now I can't.
That's the trouble. It's done now.
Yeah, that's done and gone. So yeah, I've got a new idea on how I'm going to do this Gopher Force one. So it's got to include some hills behind and some cherry blossoms and some samurai and figures and stuff. And believe me, if there's anyone out there that knows of some really good 35 or 32 scale samurai figures, please get in contact with me. They are not easy to find.
3D printing. So you got to do.
Add a third hobby to the bow.
Yeah, I should invest in a 3D resin printer, shouldn't I?
I mean, at least one saving grace is there's not much rigging on a D7, is it?
Yeah, it's relatively simple for the time.
Rigging free, yeah.
Yeah. So, exciting kit to get into.
Tell me to do a samurai set.
They did, and I've tried to find that set, and so far I haven't had any luck.
Have I got it, mate?
You might have, because they did a re-release about 6-7 years ago, and they came out and they were massively popular.
Yeah.
I've got a funny feeling, Mark, you might have a set in your stash of over 4,000 models.
4,000, my stash is nowhere near that.
That's not an exaggeration. I've seen it.
Good grief.
Don't, you don't have to say it out loud. All for sale, by the way. All for sale, everybody.
You don't have to account for that to somebody, do you, Mach?
I don't have a browse.
You've been there for decades. It's like Indiana Jones. It's like the Word House at the end of Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
A few more in monthly ramping, what the figures with the models are worth.
You've got to remember, I've been collecting them for 40 years plus. So,
oh dear. Anyway, Stewart, thank you very much for your time. It's greatly appreciated. So where can our benchmates find your channel and how to contact you?
Well, you can find me obviously on YouTube at Black Hat Scale Models. And more commonly, you can find me on Facebook at Black Hat Scale Models because I'm pretty much there annoying everybody every day. So there you go. 2 ways to contact me.
Fantastic. Do you have a website?
No, I don't. No.
Stewart, we will hopefully speak to you again in the future, and we look forward to meeting you in person.
Thank you very much. Yeah, hopefully we get to meet in person sometime very soon.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, really nice to talk to you, Stewart. Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Who would have thought that the interview with Stewart would have given us such a scoop in his direction of travel for upcoming builds? Anyway, that's it for episode 16. Coming up in episode 17, have we got a treat for you?
Have we got a treat for the BenchMates?
Apparently we do. Not only will we have one world-class modeller in the form of Martin Drayton on the show, not two with the addition of Spencer Pollard to our team, but three. Our guest is Jeff Coughlin from Scale Modelling Now, the online magazine and modelling resource. This proves to be a fascinating conversation, and I don't think we're going to get a word in edgeways, but we'll find out. Plus, we're not intending to take a break over the holidays and plan to keep you company with a few surprises and a live bench build and natter session with some of the team online. More info on that, which will be between Christmas and New Year's Day, in the next episode. So till then, keep the paint flowing, the sanding sticks clean, and we'll chat with you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.